We'll call this meeting to order. Ask everybody to turn your cell phones off and rise for the pledge to the flag. Remain standing for the invocation, please. Well, let's do that in reverse. I got it back. Invocation. Father, we love you and we thank you for loving us and giving us this another opportunity to come together as elected officials of this county. We ask you to empower us and give us the wisdom and the insight to make the right decisions that would be the best for all citizens of this county. We pray that in your Son, Jesus' name.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item of business is a consideration of a resolution to approve the agenda for this evening. And before doing so, I would just ask if each of y'all will look at the item that's on the consent agenda. If each of you have and understand it and don't have any questions, we'll leave it there. If there is any questions, I'd ask that we would move it for consideration. Other than that, I have no other questions. I just want to be sure that y'all have looked at the item on the consent agenda to be sure. I don't have a problem with it. I'm just wanting to be sure that y'all do before we get to that point.
I don't have a problem with it. They just divided the name of the company we was with before, so that's all it is to it.
Basically correct.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
We discussed it in the last meeting.
So there's been no changes since the last meeting.
Right. We good? Motion?
I made it.
Got a motion by Commissioner Loper and a second by Commissioner Floyd. All in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Next item, consideration to approve the minutes for the January 7th, 2014 Development Manual Workshop and the January 7th, 2014 Commissioners Meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Both sets of minutes? Both for both?
Is your motion to approve both sets of minutes?
Yes.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve both of the minutes for both the workshop and the meeting. All in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Next item, we should note that public comment should be limited to the items on our agenda only, and the correspondence is kept in the clerk's office for all of the items on this meeting. We have an appearance scheduled for 5:30, so we will put that off until that time. First item then on the consent agenda, consideration for the chairman to execute a revised contract with Transform Health CS Incorporated. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Who seconded that? Old business, consideration to approve a warranty deed to accept the roads in Red Oak subdivision. This is an item that was previously brought to the board and tabled on 12/17/2013. Mr. Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as the chairman stated, this is the agenda item pertaining to the roads. I think we can keep these two items separate, but if not, we can mix them up if the board so chooses. But speaking directly to the roads issue to begin with, as Mr. Chairman stated, it was tabled at the last board meeting on December 17th. The only real instruction that I recall that the board gave was to research the files regarding history of inspections, inspection reports, testing, that sort of thing. So we did do that, and we've been provided with information. I believe you will find it behind the water and sewer tab or the water sewer agenda item. But there is a few things out of the final plan checklist, a couple of inspections from CH2M which was the contractor for roads and drainage at that time. Some test results from Whitaker Laboratory and the like. Nothing in the file really explains anything in relation to the roads or the drainage. There's really nothing that would in any way explain why, for example, these small failures have occurred on the roads that have been pointed out by the Public Works Department in their latest inspection. So this really kind of stands not much different location than where it was at the last meeting. There are some information here in your staff report that's slightly revised, but suffice it to say it's mostly the same. There'll be about $2,500 to $3,000 worth of repairs that would need to be done by Public Works should the board choose to accept the road as is. And certainly, as we stated at the last meeting, there are no houses in this subdivision. So whether this falls into the board's thought processes of whether or not to approve the road, as we've discussed at previous meetings and the list and so forth, this one does not have any houses. So if you consider that to be different than any of the other ones, then certainly you could deal with this as you prefer. There's no real recommendation from staff. In as much as I've misunderstood the board's position on this, I didn't want to venture a recommendation anyway. So this is up to the board to determine how you want to handle this sort of item. It being a little different than the rest of the roads that were on the previous list. So that being said,
here the recommendation is we try to complete the subdivision. Did you just rewrite that, or did you purposely put that in again tonight? That we're trying to complete this subdivision for the developer, because I thought it was clear that this board is trying to straighten out some of these issues that we've been dealing with these roads not being accepted. I don't think that ever any of us say that we're trying to complete any subdivision for a developer.
First off, let me point out to the board, in your gray folder, there is a document in there that y'all might want to pull out that relates to this. I don't think that was mentioned, but it may be of some help.
The other thing, this falls within, this is the back of the subdivision, correct? Is this something, going back to what we discussed, that has to be addressed right now?
Oh, the failure in the road, yes, it's in the cul-de-sac to the rear, that's correct.
But it would have to be addressed immediately?
Yeah.
So a serious repair that needs to be done right now for the residents.
It would be a public.
If there is a hole, the road's clearly failing, it's going to have to be addressed. I mean, it's not a hazard to a vehicle traveling by at this particular point in time. It clearly is going to get worse. It must be done. In my opinion, it would not have to be done today.
Let me ask this question in there real quick. Under facts and finding number 4, it says the county attorney suggested if the board wishes to accept the road at this time, but not water and sewer, which is the next item on our agenda, that the deed be modified to reserve water and sewer easement rights for the developer and the right of way subject to the requirement of the law. So it seems to me that if we vote on this right, if we were to vote in one direction and do that right now, and we go to water and sewer and we want to do something with that, it's almost like we need to table this item until we talk about water and sewer and then take this item back up and we're going to make an intelligent decision.
certainly could do that if this board's will.
Okay, so
I don't have any objection to that.
I would agree with you. It's all interrelated.
In relation to the deed.
Right.
That's right.
We can't really make a decision on this without talking about building.
Mr. Smith, may I ask you a question, please?
Yes, sir.
Would you come up to the...
Yes, sir, my wife and I, yes.
Okay. The roads were put in this neighborhood by a contractor by the name of Donald Jeffcoat, is that correct?
Correct.
Mr. Jeffcoat is, I think through circumstances, is not in business anymore, is that?
No, he's not.
His brother Ricky is in business.
Yes, sir.
And it's my understanding that you have been in contact with Mr. Ricky Jeffcoat, and Ricky has offered to help you fix this road.
He has, but now I've been in contact with Mr. Donald too now. He's still got a good mind. He's now, even though he's not in business, he knows what went on.
Okay. In your opinion, as the developer, is this defect something in the road that you feel like this county should accept as is and put the burden on the taxpayers of this county to fix that road?
Well,
I'm just asking you a point blank question.
yes, I feel that way under the circumstances, of course.
And those circumstances would be what, sir?
Well, they accepted the road to the pact and then they put up signs. We paid for the signs. And the posts are still there. Somebody stole the sign. I like to steal a lot of those things. But the signs are up, sign posts are there. Both our subdivisions have sign posts and they are there. We paid for it.
All right, so you feel like, I just want to be sure that I understand all the information. You feel like that the county accepted those roads at some point in the past?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
However, you have continued to pay property tax on that road and have put a pole across that road. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
And are you in the habit of putting a pole across county land, county property?
And if the county can't keep the trash off of it, I think somebody needs to. And I called the county and they said there was nothing they could do. I mean, I couldn't, that's the situation we were in. It was it's in a public place. And the people across the street were bringing all their refuge there, even a cooler full of sheephead fish thrown in it. And I mean, that's just a start. And that's the reason I did it, to get that clear.
I just wanted to be sure.
But there's a way in there. The road's wide open. There's a driveway in there. Anybody can go in and wants to. But that did stop the trash dump.
But Mr. Smith, your contention is the county had accepted the roads,
Yes, sir.
and you've been paying taxes based on a per lot basis, not on a 6-acre basis.
Yes, sir. And my
If you
wife,
get numbers as to what you paid in taxes. We're talking about $2,500 to $3,000. What have you paid in taxes over the past, since this was developed?
my wife has that figure. Could she come up here by me? Okay, please.
Okay, since 2007, we have paid $17,724.34 in property taxes to Effingham County.
On that
On a
basis?
per lot basis.
On this, yes, no, now, wait a minute now. 2007, 2008, we paid on a basis of 6 acres.
Excuse me, and tell us the difference then. What were you being taxed when it was on acreage?
Do you want to know, you don't want to know the amount?
Yes.
Okay, in 2007, the taxes was $1,360.96. 2008, the taxes was $1,352.68. 2009, it jumped to $3,937.32. In 2009 is when we started paying per lot. Now, if the county did not accept it as a subdivision, why were we charged
On a per lot basis.
on a per lot basis? So we have paid on lots since
Since you
2000.
give us the breakdown, will you continue that? What did you pay in 2010, 2011, so forth?
Pardon?
She wants this.
The breakdown.
Okay, got 2009.
Got it.
2010 is $3,942.14.
Okay.
2011 is $2,846.18. Okay, we kept complaining, and of course, everything else went down. 2012, the taxes was $804.35. And in 2013, the taxes were $349.26.
300 what?
49.26.
And that's for how many lots?
12,
For 12 lots?
yes. Okay, all right, but if you want to know what the roads, what we pay taxes on the roads, the reason we didn't complain, if you hold on just a second, I will tell you. 2009, on the 73 hundredths of an acre for roads, we paid $5.73, which was not going to break the bank. All right, for the pump station, it was $22.47. And that wasn't enough. We didn't feel, and that's just about the same amount that we have paid every year since then. So for less than $30, what was the need to argue about it?
So is there anybody staff-wise that can answer the question of how exactly the taxes change over to being taxed on a per lot basis? What makes that? Does anybody in here know?
Should be when the plat was recorded.
Well, that's what I would assume, but I just want to verify that what's doing it. When the plat gets recorded, then who's reporting back to whom and all that? How does that exactly happen? You know, do you know? Or
I can
anybody?
answer, Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Jones, I can answer that.
Okay.
When the final plat has been approved by you guys, it goes to 3 different offices.
Okay.
It goes to the building department, it goes to the health department, and it goes to the tax assessor's office.
Who sent it?
The development services department sends it to those different departments.
The department you work for?
Yes.
So the fact that the taxes were increased would make me believe that
The assumption is we own it.
the owner,
That's the
that
assumption.
the regular revenue would raise the taxes. Is that the way I hear it?
Those are two related but different issues. You can have a,
If
if you subdivide lots, it doesn't mean that the road is a public road.
Say again?
You can subdivide lots, but that's not an indication whether the road is a public road or a private road, just because the lots have been subdivided and recognized as separate lots.
The road was built to support those lots.
The roads have to be built with county standards. What is it, 4 lots?
Are we back to then if the plat had a certain wording on it? Eric?
That is a factor. And if, and I don't know
Have we
that
looked at
plat
that on
was
this
not
one at all?
included
Have
in
we
it.
looked at that on this one?
But it's also a factor that they continue to put barricade across the road, which is an indication that it was still considered to be private on
Or
part
it's
of
trying to
the
protect his lots?
Was
Yeah, lots.
the road ever opened up to traffic? Did traffic start using the road? I mean, obviously, there's no construction being done in there, right?
Pardon?
And did you ever start building in?
No, sir. No, sir. There was no building going on. Everything stopped.
So it was, the only traffic in there was people riding in and dumping something once in a
Yeah,
while.
that was the only traffic there. I had no, I mean, there was nothing.
And an
Where the
18-wheeler that stopped, that parked in there every night for months.
We parked in Marina?
An 18-wheeler.
The truck driver parked his 18-wheeler in there, and I mean, you would have done the same thing, every one of you.
What I'm trying to get to is why is there a road failure? If there was no traffic on it.
Well, that 18-wheeler might have done it.
We don't,
I don't know.
we didn't know there was a road.
It was inspected and approved by the county. Now, why it broke, I don't know. I built subdivision before that the road didn't hold up. That was inspected and approved. I think we all have just developed anything.
And I might be getting two issues confused, something to do with water and sewer and something to do with roads, but possible, is there a document that shows that they met the original punch out or that in water and sewer?
There's a couple of different inspection reports, I guess, if you go into the original, I'm trying to find it.
And we haven't had a chance to read this.
Just hold on a minute. So is there any more questions about the roads? because that's the issue that we're on.
And I wasn't understanding if my question was about the roads and water and sewer. Did they need to punch out the roads? Let me get you that.
Well, if you look in your documentation, page 15 and 19, this is in the, on item number 2.
Mr. Smith,
Yes, sir.
you and Ms. Smith may want to sit down. You're free to stand there, but I think this might be you might not want to stand.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
What you're saying, tell us is on those 15 and 19 Whitaker laboratories, it satisfied Whitaker Labs test?
It was required an 1.5 inch of pavement, and you can see they both meet that. One's 162, one's 177. If you keep on going, it's sort of mixed in here. Go to page 18 of 19 and 19 of 19. These are both compaction reports. I believe Whitaker did those also. On page 18, if you look at the top, that was on the stone base. If you look at 19 was under curb and gutter. Required compaction was 100. It was about all 3 were over 100. Or all 5, if you want to look at all both of them together. Those are core compaction tests on the road, the Tomahawk Road itself. And if you go backwards to page 16 of 19, you'll see there was an inspection done by CHM2 Hill, who was our public works inspection. I was at that time, January 28, 2008, and there were 5 different items. These were inspections, an inspection report on the roads. These five items were found to be deficient, needed to be brought up to standard. Then going backwards again, if you go to page 13 of 19, you'll see that in February of 2008 also, 25th, right at a month later, there was a follow-up inspection done, and there were 2 items noted at that time. One was that road and traffic control signs have been purchased and will be installed by the Public Works Department, which is the sign Mr. Smith referred to. And number 2, just make sure road control is checked after rain event, which would indicate to me that there was at least some work done for the first punch list, because those things don't show up again.
So basically, I'm installing some signs and just ensuring this erosion control, the road was done.
Alan Davis, the project manager, is stating that it was, everything passed.
All right, so February of 2008, this appears to be a final inspection, signs are up, and now it's going to start the 1-year maintenance period. Then after that, where did it get final accepted?
It wasn't. I think that's what happened, is there was that 1-year period, and at the end, the developer came back with a deed, came back before you like he does, like we're doing now. And I think in most every instance, and I'm generalizing here, of these 50-some odd subdivisions we had, that's the step that was missed. Not always, some of them never satisfied the punch list, some they got right here, and it never came back before the board. So that never happened. And I'm summarizing things, 2 years before I started here, so based on my reading of the file.
So that's kind of where I see that it is. It appears everything was done, it was satisfactory at this point. The signs were installed, because that, obviously they were there at some point, they must have been installed. So that's cleared that up. But we started the maintenance period, and then after that start of the maintenance period, I don't see anything where anything has been done until now.
Correct.
Is that about right?
That's certainly one way of looking at it, 2005.
Ideally, a year later, we would have went out and done another
Yeah.
inspection.
That has to be.
At the request of the
And what prompts that? Does the county have any responsibility to say, okay, it's been a year, let's go out and check this and wrap this up and be done with it? I mean, is that one of the reasons where this situation with all these roads hanging out now?
Well, and that's
That's
a
a
good
good
point.
question, I don't know.
And that's things that we're clearing up now in the new development stuff. But at this time, we had to request, I say we as a developer, we had to request, that we've got, we're past the 1-year period, we've done our final, because you request them to come out and do a final inspection. There's a new punch list created. Sometimes it's very minimal little things, grass in the gutter and, odds and things like that. And then you have your final, then you come up and get the road accepted. So that seems to be the part that wasn't.
And that's probably going to be the case on 70%.
And I can only speak from personal experience with Stonegate. Did the same thing. I got on my punch list, and then I got busy, and I never came back until this board last year finally approved it. And whenever they went back out, I had punch list to take care of it, which I did, this board approved.
So during that period, after it's been accepted, it's in that maintenance period, yes, it's open for public traffic, people are driving on it. But the developer is saying, and the contractor is guaranteeing to the developer that their work is going to stand for that year, and if something fails. So, you know, we don't know when this failure that we're looking at here happened. Did it happen 6 months after, you know, or has it been 3 years later? But
Correct. Had we went back a year later, it may have been failing then. I have no way of answering that. That's what true. Could have done 6 months ago. I don't know the answer to that.
right.
Regardless, the plat was recorded.
Well, my point, I guess, is,
We changed the plat.
when we discussed it, we're trying to clean this up. We're talking about a $2,500 repair. Yes, it's coming from the taxpayer, but these people have already paid
You're talking about
$17,000.
$30-something thousand repair.
Well, why does it say 25?
Because you aren't to the sewer yet.
Yeah. Well, we're just talking about roads.
We can talk about the roads now.
Yeah, let's just keep that.
We're talking about the road. But that's going to be an interesting discussion as well. But, you know, again, we're trying to wrap these things up. And these are taxpayers, just because there's not a house there, I mean, you still pay tax on lots. That's just my point. Everybody's got an opinion.
I just don't think that, and I'm kind of like Mr. Kessler, I'm kind of on the side of, I don't think the entire county is responsible for taking care of things that other people should do in their due diligence as being a developer. Being a developer doesn't guarantee that it's going to turn a profit. It's a speculative market, right? I think that we as people who are contractors and developers, we're responsible somewhat also. It's not all on the taxpayer. And in this case here, we don't know when the road failed, you know, and
Right, but I believe the county has some responsibility to wrap these loose ends up, because that's why we're in the position we're in now.
And that's the
They
reason
pay
they're
more
working
in
with
taxes.
Chase.
Okay, if the amount is $2,500, they paid more in taxes in 2 of the years that it was switched to lots that no houses on. And one of the arguments with why CUBA exists and things like that benefits to those taxpayers is because they're not using any county services and not creating a load.
they're promising not to develop.
Yeah, but if they change, then they have to go back and repay. So they don't pay until they do.
But there's also the option of recombining lots.
And creating a, there's nobody there using any services. But they were being charged more or less as if that has occurred.
They have sales tax on their too.
So why would it not be reasonable that not the other taxpayers of Effingham County, but those taxpayers that have already paid extra, why would that not cover that road? I don't want other taxpayers to pay for anybody either.
But then why did that road fail when it was not even, it was never used? I mean, that's something too, whoever built the road, it looks like would be responsible for part of it. I mean, what,
It passed all the
Why did
tests,
it,
so I don't have an answer for you.
that's what I'm saying, but we don't know when it washed out, or reason that the road fell in. I mean,
Should we make them pay for the road and give them their taxes back, or they paid extra for nothing?
I don't know, you're gonna get the school board to give them all their tax back.
That'd be up to them.
The majority of that tax that they paid went to the school board.
True. They had a business school.
Yeah.
Nobody living there.
And all I'm
Nobody living
doing,
there.
all I'm doing is pointing out the same scenario, the same issue. They're paying school taxes every year, and nobody's going to school from there. So the same thing could be argued there. That's the reason that the ordinances were changed, am I correct, Mr. Leo? That, I mean, because this fallacy in the system existed, and the ordinance were changed in what year? 2009?
May of 2009, yes, sir. Right, for the sole purpose of this exact scenario,
For this
that
same reason.
we recognized as staff that it wasn't functioning correctly, that there were gaps in here and it was resulting in problems, and that the best way to modify the ordinance would be to require the roads to be accepted at the time of plat recording from then on, and then we would certainly clean up any roads that any developers brought to us in the interim period of time. And obviously many of them have been approved between May of 2009 until now, than May of Powell. Yes, sir.
Because I totally agree there were fallacies in the way things were done. And we can't go back and correct everything, but the situation that I'm for, if there is something that exists today, how do we fix it? And this is one of those things under the old ordinance. And everybody was expected to come back in a year
At the end of the year, yes, sir.
with the deed and ask for it to be accepted.
That was the procedure, yes, sir.
That was the procedure under the old ordinance.
As
And then
not good as it was, yes, sir.
Currently, do we automatically within a year go for another inspection before the bond expires? So we initiate that now.
We do now, yes, sir, because the bond is going to expire, and if we don't do the inspection, we lose the bond and we lose any capability of being able to do that. So it's very important that we do that. And when Stephanie was in our department, she kept track of those on the calendar. It was, basically the 1 year time frame. You were notified in advance, and those inspections did take place. Yes, sir.
The actual difference between just the 2009 taxes and the 2008 taxes, just 1 year, is $2,585. Just a
Any other questions or comments on this? Does the board wish to table this item for consideration, final consideration to hear about the sewage before making a determination on this, or is the board interested in moving forward on this at this time?
I don't feel we can answer the number 4 part of this item until we hear the other. So I would recommend that.
So would you move to table this for further consideration after we hear the next item?
Yes.
It's 5:30, Mr. Chairman.
So I have a motion to table this for further consideration until after we consider the water and sewer infrastructure. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to table. All in favor? None being opposed, we will table it for further discussion after item number 2 of old business. Being it's after 5:30, we will now have our appearance by. I'm terrible with pronunciation, so somebody help me. How do you pronounce that?
Dejanay.
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 Dejanay. All right, so you have to forgive me.
That's all right. I did for 30 years. They used to call me out for that.
Well, come forward, sir, and state your name for the record, please, sir.
I'm Deacon Charles Dejanay. I thank you for this opportunity to come before this board today to ask for some help. I'm a resident of Shadowbrook, which is down here on Ebenezer Road, and we have a homeowners association that they said is supposed to be maintaining our roads. They said that the roads were put in. When I went to the county said they didn't inspect these roads. They didn't give them the permission to put them down. They just put them down themselves. Some of my biggest concerns are, which I did provide copies of the roads. I personally walked the whole division and took pictures of all the roads. And I do pay taxes. I think I pay something like almost $2,500, $1,700 for school taxes as well. And I've never been delinquent, and I always pay on time. And all I'm asking is for some help, because now my life has now become threatened. And the problem that we have in those roads over there, over by Ebenezer Road, going into Shadowbrook, is that it looks like it's roots or trees or something coming up in the road. And it's a big old hump right in front of my house that goes from one side of the street to the other. And when people come over there and go down there and go fishing, they think that's my responsibility. I had a guy come up to my door with a 12-gauge shotgun, and he was looking at me saying, "You need to fix your blank road. I said, that ain't my road to fix it. But now, when it gets that physical, that somebody's coming to try to do bodily harm to me, and that's what I pay taxes for, and keep those kind of people locked up somewhere, somebody's got to reach out and give me some help before something happens. If you go down those roads and you look at those potholes, I have bought 4 new tires in a year's time that I had destroyed on my car. The homeowners association said that Jenkins Plumbing or something had it at one time and that they went bankruptcy. Then when I went to the county said, well, Jenkins went bankruptcy, then it's your homeowners association. Homeowners association said no. So what I'm asking you all to do, if you don't mind, is that the county takes those roads over, and I don't care if I gotta pay an extra $1,000 a year for taxes. I don't have a problem with that. I just want to build some safe roads and not have people come knocking, trying to tear my door down, thinking that that is my road out there, and they just knock a hole in their boat. And if you look at the pictures, I don't know, do you have those pictures? If you look at those pictures, you will see potholes, manholes, just flipped over. A little kid or something could get down in there. It's terrible. You can go in there this morning, there's some of the pictures that I went through and personally took pictures of, and if a school bus or something hit it the right way, he's going to turn that shield, he's going to turn that school bus over, and all those kids are going to get hurt. So we just waiting for an accident to happen. And I just, like I told the homeowners association, I'm just not going to pay you no more homeowners association until you fix these roads. And the homeowners association is supposed to be someplace in Thunderbolt. So I don't even know if the people even live out here, they even see the condition of those roads. But I mean, it's terrible. I even have a police report by the Effingham Sheriff Department that said that those roads are unsafe. And if he was chasing a criminal and he came through here real blind, not knowing that, he probably might turn his own car over. If an ambulance came through there, they might turn it over, or a fire truck. But I just don't feel that it's right that we have to live up under those situations.
Have you provided me with a copy of that police report?
Did I get a copy? Yes.
Is it in here or?
It's not in
Okay.
there, but I have.
Okay. Well, I know this is just an appearance tonight, so we can get those things. I just want to be sure we had access to that. Can I ask you a question? Do you have knowledge that the homeowners association owns the roads? Did the developer?
The developer, Jenkins, was the developer of it. He put the roads down. When I talked to the homeowners association, when I talked to the county said we didn't inspect those roads and we didn't give him permission to put them down.
But unless the homeowners association accepted by deed those roads, they don't own them either. The developer still does, and that's what I was trying to understand.
That I don't know. I don't know whether I was told that the homeowner, if you didn't have if it was 75% field or better, it belongs to the homeowners association. If it was less than 75% field, it belongs to the developer. And the developer, which was supposed to be Jenkins Plumbing, went bankrupt.
I don't know if Jenkins did go bankrupt.
No, actually it was developed by Parker and Barn and Ron, and it was sold to Jenkins, and they also own Jenkins Plumbing. The Jenkins and Jenkins development thing, I'm not sure if it's still active or solid.
Southern Pine Land and Timber Inc.
That was Parker and Barn and Ron.
That's who still has title to the roads.
Right.
And so we will be able to go over tonight.
I think Jenkins bought the lots in there.
But I do want to clarify, in my background on this, and I have driven in that subdivision and looked at it because of some past complaints, and I understand how bad it is. I do know that. Isn't this the subdivision that the county actually approved a lower level of road be put in there, and they allowed the ash to be used in it?
Phase 1.
in phase one?
Correct. There are 4 phases developed, I believe, either 3 or 4 that are actually developed. Phase 1 has actually, the remaining either 2 or 3 do not, they have red stone base.
And phase 1 is actually the section that's so bad.
Yeah, there's actually 5, and I'm trying to think, it's been some time since I looked.
Okay, well, that's the top one, not off of that. But they had a letter that said, because I seen it one time, it was kind of a, you're at your own risk. If you use this and pay on it and it fails, the developer's doing this at their own risk. Problem is, the developer has walked away from it. And we're looking at, on this, in your subdivision, we're looking at $250,000, $300,000 repair to go in there and fix these roads. We're going to basically have to go in there and tear it all out and start over. We're trying a different process with some roads down in the south end of the county to try to figure out a way to leave this stuff in place and pave over it. So we're kind of in experimental phase now, so we're working on that. We still don't really know what to do with these ash-based roads, right? But this is probably a good example of why this is so important, what we're talking about here tonight, because it's the same situation. The developer is basically saying, I'm not going to fix the roads. I don't think I should fix the road, or I'll file bankruptcy, or I'll have a business, or whatever reason. The developer is taken out of the picture, and the county's looking at stepping in and accepting these. And we're looking at tonight, we're looking at a road that's $2,500 and possibly $250,000. So it's both extremes of what we're going to wind up happening. That's why it's so important what we do with this $2,500 policy.
But does the county have no liability or responsibility when they're the ones that set the rules for the developers?
It's actually not they,
Now,
we are the county, not they.
Does the county have any responsibility when they set the rules, the guidelines? They approve the plat to be recorded, which makes a buyer that buys a lot have a certain, what's the term there?
Expectation.
Reasonable expectation.
I'm agreeing.
What their taxes they're paying.
This gentleman right here, when he bought his house, he had no knowledge of all of this stuff I'm talking about. You know, and I understand that. That's why
The
we've got to be
county may
careful.
not set the rules for all of
But we've got to be careful what we do. There was rules, they weren't followed. Just as in the case with Mr. Smith, there was a method to how these roads would get turned over. It was never done.
I would be curious, just like I asked Mr. Smith what's been paid, but just the idea that there could, what is a special tax district created? Whatever it's up to address. Eventually it's got to be taken care of. Eventually it's got to land in our lap here. I mean, the developer's done. He's bankrupt.
We're going to I agree. Something will have to be done.
Now, is it raising taxes in that area to cover it, or what? I mean, we're going to have to address these. You're right, it's from one extreme to the other.
Are you the gentleman that has had people going around that hump in the road up into your yard?
Yes, sir. I've had probably I would probably say at least 2 or 3 occasions where if you had a gun in your house, you probably would have went and got it the way they came and hit your door. You probably would think somebody was trying to break into your house. I mean, but it runs straight across the street from my house from one end to the other. And when you get to that hump, you have to slow down. If you don't slow down, you're going to just hit
And hit somewhere else.
Yeah, that's right.
Does everybody coming in the neighborhood have to, is this the main entrance?
One way in.
That right there is one of the main entrances right there when you get up to the street that go left or right there. And you got,
The problem with that is the ash, is the ash that we bring.
When did you purchase your house?
it was 2004, 2005, sir.
Okay, so you've been there for a while.
Right, sir.
So you've had the opportunity to sit there and watch it be a decent road and just keep degrading to the...
Right, sir. And my police report, I gave the homeowners association a chance to do something because that report was done back in 2012. And when the officer did it, and I went and got a copy of it from the police station, and nobody still will not do anything to help us with those roads. And like I said, it's just waiting for an accident it's gonna be a tragedy. It's gonna be a tragedy that something's gonna happen with those roads or somebody over there one day.
Now, you mentioned something, and Commissioner Floyd alluded to it. One of the possible fixes is for the county to take those roads, go out and fix those roads.
Okay.
And there's estimates upwards to $500,000 to possibly to fix all of them.
When it comes to safety, sir, roads, keeping people locked up that need to be locked up, I don't care how much taxes you put on me. I'll pay.
But how does your neighbors feel?
Everybody in your neighborhood's not gonna feel that way, and they're gonna have a claim.
But do you have any idea of the sentiment of other people? Have you talked to other folks in your neighborhood?
I've talked to other people and they feel the same way. The taxes, if we gotta pay taxes anyway, we pay the homeowners association, so we gotta pay homeowners association and they're not doing anything. They probably cut the grass, maybe coming in that interest, maybe in a year's time, I would say probably 2 or 3 times out of the year.
And y'all don't have any swimming pool in there?
We don't have any swimming pools, sir. We do have a lake where people can go in, it's big enough to put boats in it.
I got you.
But we also had a playground for the kids. And they promised that they were gonna keep that up. They didn't do anything with that. They promised that they were gonna put a gate up over the lake so everybody didn't just, anybody could just come in and out and give all the residents a key. They never did that.
I have a great suggestion.
How many lots are in the subdivision? Anybody have any idea?
I'm not sure.
I say that we send a letter out to every citizen in a subdivision that is in this situation and ask them to come to a public meeting in which we're going to discuss raising their taxes to fix their roads.
That would be fine.
That helps.
You know,
It's a
because
resolution.
Unfortunately, the county has no empowerment to be able to take care of your playgrounds or your lakes or things like that.
right.
We do have some empowerment to deal with roads. Sometimes it's not an easy fix, and sometimes it's, as I have found out since taking office, it is a lot slower than I would like. But, you know, I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you pointing this out to this board. It is something that has been discussed, and it's always good to push a little bit to get it before the forefront.
Has your homeowners association responded to you in kind of as to whether they're saying they even own the road or not? Have they responded in that way?
They don't.
They don't own it. That's because that's what, I'm assuming they don't own it, but.
They do not.
Okay.
Toss just told us who owned it.
And
It's just over 200 lots in there.
if this phasing map that I have is right, there's 204. There's 94 in phases 1 and 2 and 110 in phase 3. 4 and 5 are not built, so there's 204 houses and an additional 55 and
Just here.
additional 125 left to be developed in that subdivision.
So see, we could do that whole, we could do the project and do it over a 4-year payout or something like that, and it would wind up being about $300 and something, $400 a lot.
And that's called special tax district. If you did a special tax district, and let's just use some rough numbers, let's say it's 300 lots in there. If you did, say, $1,000 a lot over a 10-year period, that would be $300,000. And you did that $100 a year, is what that would be. $100 a year for 10 years,
And you
and that would take care of it. That would be a special tax district.
And if I may,
Doing on all road projects, yeah.
How much is your homeowner association due?
it's $100 a year, sir.
And we would have no control over that, so even if we deal with the roads, that's a civil matter that you would have. When you state that you not going to pay your homeowner's dues, I can't advise you one way or the other on that because we have no authority in our homeowner association.
I understand that, sir.
Okay.
But I would like to say this. I just feel like the county should have some say-so when it comes to public safety. I don't want a car or a truck coming through my living room And if you see exactly where this road and this big old hump in the road is, that could easily happen. Somebody can come through there like they do sometimes, driving 60, 70 miles an hour. And they could wind up in my living room or in my neighbor's backyard with the dogs. But, you know, when it comes to safety now, I do feel that the county has the right to say something, because now you're playing with people's lives, and I don't feel like that's fair.
Well, we thank you for your presentation, and like Commissioner Jones says, we can't take action on this tonight, but I will say for the record, I like her idea. Let's figure out how much it's gonna cost to fix your roads. Let's send a letter out to everybody, let them know this is what it's gonna cost, and then we find out who's in favor, and we take a poll of it, and we move forward.
All right.
Create a special tax district, fix the roads, and everybody pays a proportionate share, because that would be for the benefit of y'all, the people living there. It's not for the benefit of somebody else, driving down Highway 21 or something like that.
Is it any way we could go in there and fix that hump just to keep from causing accidents?
By law, I don't think we can.
Is it in the maintenance period? Was it ever punched? It's
We
still
discussed
privately
it.
owned.
Fell through the crack.
We can't repair something we don't own by law. We have to own it.
Yeah, we did punch list on these, I'm trying not to say one wrong.
But it never got in the maintenance period, right?
No.
So it's not been accepted at all.
Correct.
You could possibly.
Can you look
contract
on the
with-
tax assessors or tax commissioner website, see if the taxes have even been paid? You can't look?
I can, they have, I had that in that sheet that I gave going out recently.
I thought I remembered the taxes haven't been paid on those roads in the last 4 years or 5 years.
Here, I could probably tell you.
Mr. Chairman, you could possibly contract with the homeowners association to do some kind of emergency repair where you're not acknowledging that it's county road. The county can do work for compensation. You can't do gratuitous work.
How can you do an agreement with them when they don't own it?
Well, I don't know if they have, but
Yeah.
No, Southern Pine Lane and Timber, and this was an exhaustive title search when I was going through preparing this 3 months or so ago. I looked at the title of each of the roads just to have an idea of who we would be dealing with. And according to the tax assessor's website, it was Southern Pine Lane and Timber, which that is.
That is.
certainly each homeowner has some rights in the road because
The bank took the phase 4 and 5, I believe, in the back, and then the rest were bought by Mr. Jenkins in some fashion, whatever entity that was. And I can go back and look, it's been quite some time. They actually had an engineer on board at one time when we did these punch lists. And one of the things they were doing was coming up with a cost to repair these roads. The last conversation I had with them, they said, yes, they came up with cost, they just didn't want to do anything at the present time. And I don't even remember the young lady's name, but I have to go back and dig in my emails to see who it was, but I can certainly try to see how far they got, what sort of cost estimates they came up with, and see if they share them with us.
Who was it? They?
It was a bank, I don't remember the name of the bank. I can dig through and see if I can find it.
That's
It's probably been over a year ago.
My last question, sir.
Yes.
I just want to make sure I understand that correctly. I know what you're saying when you said that you don't own those roads. But when the roads or something is unsafe, I know the sheriff can pull you over and give you a citation. If we got an issue with safety, we can't do anything to anyone, we can just know that it's a safety issue and we can continue to let them operate that way?
See, what I'm fearful that clouds the issue is, say you're just one house, one lot, and by yourself. That's private property, and we can't go on and fix private property.
Right.
But the scenario we're under is that we did approve a subdivision and we allow people to buy houses in it. So that we have some sense of ownership also. I'm not saying, I don't know the answer, that's what I'm unsure.
And see, that's where it crosses over into the problem I have explaining to folks that Same situation, land was divided, subdivided, and they assumed when they bought the property that the road was a public road, but it's not, it's a private road, Hadley Road, good example.
But what gives them that reasonable assumption is that the county approved a plat to be recorded. That's what gives them the reasonable assumption.
And exactly, Hadley Road, plat's recorded, you know, the road was designed to be private from day one. Another way to look at this is Walmart parking lot. They say they have a big hole in their parking lot. People are complaining about it. The county can't go on that private property and repair that hole, even though it's a safety issue. So that's where our dilemma here is this is a privately owned road still. And now for us to do anything, because certainly I think we could go in and do something to try to alleviate this major problem.
Walmart's parking lot was never intended to be a road that was taken over by the county. And it's a complete difference. That is always intended to be private, and that's a known thing to all parties. When we buy inside a subdivision that's been recorded at the courthouse, and the county's approved it, it's a different assumption than when you go to Walmart.
Silverwood Plantation,
That
private.
is private. That's a gated private, and the law.
But it hasn't always
But
been.
it hasn't always been.
It used to be public.
And the point on that is, that doesn't, it's not
Do
relevant.
you think people that buy those lots in there make that same assumption that you're saying when they're buying in there?
It's gated. It's gated.
Yeah.
It's gated. That gives you an assumption of privacy.
And my question is, I just want to make sure I clearly understand this, sir. If we know we got somebody that's doing something wrong, or we know we got somebody that's operating something, and we know it's wrong, or we know it's unsafe, the county can't do anything to step in and say, time out, this is a safety issue. Now, you can do what you want to do on this private property, but now this becomes a safety issue. You're talking about people's lives, kids, and everything else that can get hurt. The county can't come into those people and say, well, we fix those roads, we gonna bill you, because it's a safety issue now.
Our county attorney would have to correct me if I'm wrong, but under the laws of this state, there is nothing that I know of that gives a county board of commissioners the right to come onto private property for any reason. In fact, this very board has debated an issue for emergency management, and this very board has argued the fact that we should not have the right to come on your property for any reason. Now, the state gives sheriffs rights to come, or, law enforcement, surveyors, certain other entities' rights to come onto private property for certain reasons. But I can totally understand your dilemma and your question, because you have sat there and watched something just totally erode in front of you, and it has become a safety issue for you and your family. And I totally agree with you. We should have the right to go in there and do that.
Right. And
Now, we may, under some law, be able to go in and condemn the roads. We may be able to go in and actually condemn it. The tax assessor or the tax commissioner has actually sold some roads for failure to pay taxes. We may be able to go in and claim the roads because the taxes haven't been paid. I don't know all of
The
those
owner may well
answers.
deed it over to us.
And the owner probably, when we go to him, would probably say, here, I'll deed it to you, if it's not tied up in some court proceedings and to where he couldn't do it. All I'm saying is, sir, I think on behalf of this board, I would have to tell you thank you for coming and putting a face to this issue.
thank you, sir.
It makes it be a real problem that we need to address. And we need to take this up and address it instead of pushing it down the road.
Okay. I appreciate the board giving me this opportunity to come.
And thank you for your time, and keep up with the sheriff if somebody comes banging on your door.
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thankfully, this is a problem that can't happen again. You know, these things have been fixed. But we do have those few years that most of us inherited that have anything to do with creating the problem. Matter of fact, I remember coming to this board as citizens speaking against the ash completely, you know, because I had learned early on after trying to use some of it, it was going to be a problem. And now here I am sitting trying to figure out what to do with 152 miles of it.
And I came before the board and spoke in favor of them starting to require a bond.
So we've got, it's fixed, but there is that window of time that we're dealing with these issues. And how do we do that fairly? That's kind of, and that's what we're talking about from the low dollar range.
Well, I was against to do it by my house, but it's worse than this road, really, going down towards.
Would you be in favor of a special tax district in your area? Probably not.
Well, I'm just trying to blanket, but I'm saying that if the homeowners association, if all the homeowners came, I mean,
And a majority said just,
somehow it's gotta be repaired.
If I lived
It's
there,
gonna be-
$100 a year would be, I'd be typical
Yeah.
of that.
I would have to
Their
tell
homeowners,
subdivision
forget it.
is so different than like a majority because
Okay.
it's probably the worst. And they may really be, because it's so bad, they may really be in favor of something like that.
all right, this is something we're going to have to deal with, but not right this minute. All right, anybody need a break before we take that? All right, 10-minute break. We'll reconvene at 6:15. All right, let's talk about this next item, number 2, consideration to approve a warranty deed to accept the water and sewer infrastructure in Red Oak subdivision.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I would ask the board to refer to the, closer, is that better? Refer to the additional material folder. I believe you have been provided with a new staff report and a couple of quotes that pertain to this particular matter, so if you would refer to that as well. I'll try to go through the staff report fairly quickly. Essentially, the differences here and what's going on in the past, few weeks since this was tabled back on December 17th, we were instructed to get estimates on the punch list, check the plans in the original punch list and make sure they were the same, and then also obviously to get estimates. Again, as discussed previously on the other agenda item, this was a situation under the old ordinance when the water and sewer was approved, if you want to use that word, as operational at the time of the final plat recording, but the assumption was going to be, obviously, there was going to be a 1-year maintenance period, and at the end of the 1-year maintenance period, there would be another set of inspections, and some punch lists would be generated, and therefore there would be more things to be done before the actual ownership change would take place via the deed brought forward.
Again, this had to be prompted by the developer. In 1 year, you didn't automatically go back.
That is correct. It is very correct. There was no procedure in place at that time for the county to automatically go out and do an inspection on these sorts of things after 1 year. No, sir. You're correct. Where was I now? Yeah, the request was made just this past year. The inspections were redone. Obviously, you guys have seen the revised punch list that was generated in 2013. I went back and looked at the original engineering design plans. Item number 6 is correct. That's the only one that really checks out exactly directly off the plans, because the rest of the stuff that's on there is either just things that have broken or been somehow maintenance issues generated regarding them, or in situations where it was pertaining to the electrical, there were no electrical plans submitted. So the developer never really had a set of electrical drawings that we could necessarily go by when you're doing an inspection. So in that case, all those comments are strictly based on just regular Effingham County standard specifications, standard details, and code issues. Now we did go back and get the quotes as requested. The developer was nice enough to allow an electrician to come on site and to allow Flight to come on site as well. Flight to be in the manufacturer of the pump and panel for the pump station. You'll see in your materials there's a quote from Flight that deals directly with the pumps only. And if you turn to that page, I apologize while I get that page up. This is basically a repair kit where you're going to be looking at seals and bearings and that sort of thing. They're going to be replaced. So $2,100 worth of work that would bring those pumps, just the pumps, back to original operating condition, therefore would be acceptable. The electrician's quote is also included there. You'll notice it's very long and detailed. I would point out to you that about halfway down on the first page, remove the control panel, flight will take panel from their site to the shop, test the components and make repairs. So that's additional costs to what the electrician is talking about. There's also the requirement down further for flight to add another breaker for the emergency dialer, and then also down at the bottom, flight will furnish a transducer, that's pressure transducer level determination to be able to make sure we keep a level control. So those things are not included in his quote. His quote is $23,475 for the remaining electrical items. I did follow up with flight once I got this from the electrician, and actually did receive just today, literally no more than an hour and a half ago, and a revised estimate from flight pertaining to those items that are noted in the electrician's report, and especially pertaining to the panel itself. They estimate that it could cost as much as $16,000 additionally to address issues with the panel. And now that is a worst case estimate because they don't have the panel at their shop. So they can't, be certain that everything does or doesn't work at this time. But they basically quoted what would it take to rebuild the panel if worst case sort of scenario. So then you're looking at essentially $2,000, $23,000, $16,000, adds up to over $40,000 worth of repairs that would need to be done in order to make this lift station compliant with Effingham County standard details, standard specifications, and electrical code.
Now, that's today's standards on electrical? Because
I don't know, no intention, there was no evaluation of what the codes were at that time. The electrical.
Now, if there was no electrical design plan submitted and it was approved, then basically we approved the developer to do whatever they wanted to.
I talked to the
If you
electrician
want to-
before I came here that checked this out. I talked to Ricky Jeffcoat, Dan Jeffcoat, or Don Jeffcoat, and Victor Bellavorska, electrician. And these pumps were working. Georgia Power landed the wires to it, powered it up, and they cycled this twice for 2 drawdowns. So how do we go from an operational system that we're basically accepted to $40,000?
I wouldn't describe it as accepted. I would just describe it as these inspections were done from the perspective of, is this okay to allow this plat to be recorded? Not necessarily from the perspective of, is everything exactly right so that it could be owned and operated by Effingham County? I wouldn't
Without
use
inspection,
that.
Georgia Power, I don't think, makes a connection, do they? Without an approved inspection by the county, they cannot.
Electrical inspection.
Electrical inspection.
I have no documentation that the county did an electrical inspection, but
Right, but it was powered up and ran.
Yeah, certainly.
It certainly was.
Inspected. The contractor, electrician, he would have called for an inspection, and the county inspector come out and inspect it.
Perhaps.
And probably would be called to make a connection. But what appears to have happened here is there was a startup, and the startup is done on your pumps, make sure everything in the station is working like it should, the drawdowns are done.
functioning, yes, sir.
Right, but that wouldn't include things such as fences and rock and thing, hydrants, that kind of thing. That's just basically saying
Nor would it-
the pump station is pumping and will pump effluent.
But
But my point here is I'm with Mr. Floyd here. I mean, in all fairness, how do we go from saying, okay, you build it with just a basic system, a basic pump station, to going and requiring automatic dialers? If the new standard was, say, a generator, would we require them to put in a generator at the station too? If the plan, I'm all about if the plan said do it, it needs to be on there. If the plan said a stainless steel vent and it's a PVC, it needs to be a stainless steel vent.
It did say. That is the one thing that we could say that, yes.
But I'm with Mr. Floyd here now, in all fairness, how did we go from a startup that passed to a possibly $20,000 to $40,000, what it's going to take to put it back in operation?
Again,
And I'll agree, the pump sitting there for 5 years, yes, they need to be checked.
The pump sitting there for 5 years, not to mention the panel has incurred damage. I would let you know that this isn't as if it was hermetically sealed for 6 years and everything was exactly in the same condition as it was at the time the original inspection was done. I mean, we will note that the pump station panel was open for some period of time. How it got open, how long it was open, I have no idea, obviously.
I guess my point here is I think it's reasonable to say that it needs to be in the condition it was in when the startup was done, the electrical, everything was working as it was at that time. If there's been any damages done because something was left open, then that belongs to the developer. But for us to come back at this time and ask them to do over and above and with nothing, no plan that says that, I think that's a little bit over the top.
And I have a question, I might be getting a couple of different things confused, so I'm not sure if you'll help me with this. It may be different when it's a system improvement, when it's not a system improvement. Like with something I'm looking at with mine, my engineer had to sign off that the construction was inspected and completed, and then EPD actually, there was a letter from EPD that they had also come out and verified that the construction was finished according to the specification. Is that the case only in system improvements?
It wouldn't be the case. The only time EPD, in theory, would come out to do any sort of inspection on any sort of construction of water and sewer would be as if it is GFA funded and they are inspecting for the purposes of protecting GFA only.
Well, that's a great answer. Appreciate that one.
What makes it even more interesting in my conversations, I specifically asked Mr. Jeffcoat if he felt like the county accepted it, and he said 100%. And I asked about the lot, and he said, I watched a county employee hang a lot on that roadway. And Mr. Smith asked, do I get a key to that lot? He goes, no.
I don't know what county employee
I say that.
you're referring to.
I this guy never met.
I don't, all I can tell you is it was not any of my employees. I can't tell you if there was another county employee in another department. I can't.
There whenever these draw-out tests were done. They drove off, the assumption was we were there.
But then on the other hand, it's not the county's fault. If they went ahead and built houses in there, the pump would have been operating and it wouldn't work. That part, the county did not have, the county did not delay him from building houses in there.
No, I'm
In other words,
I'm talking about the system itself.
I know, but the system was working at that time.
Right.
If it had been houses, of course, I know what happened to all that too. The economy dropped. But what I'm saying is if somebody built houses there that had been running that pump, then the county wouldn't now say we liable for the pump.
Probably would have go broke, and then it's like, who's going to fix it? And then we'd be in the same situation. Somebody didn't drop the ball and didn't either ask the county to finish it up, or the county, it'd be the same situation, I believe.
Well, the problem that is concerning me now, because you go back and forth and you have all these different points, is the one caveat on both of these issues is, what's the solution to the fact that if we're saying they didn't bring it back after the year? That's the only thing that I can see that's a problem for them.
No. I mean, because the way it was is you had to maintain it for a minimum of a year and then do a final inspection and it would be accepted. If you stretched out 2-3 years, that was on you. Like, for example, if you had a problem and you didn't want to spend the money doing the corrective punch list stuff, you could wait 6 to 8 more months, but, you know.
Years, keep it on.
Yeah, it sure.
But what I'm saying, in a year's time,
We
we
had-
had been working, and
obviously,
checked.
The ones that I built, we wanted to make sure that we got them punched out as soon as possible.
So I've seen the proof that they had the inspections originally, and I felt a certain way. But basically now I realize if they didn't bring it back a year later for the reinspection, Toss, is that what we're being told on both of the issues? They did not bring it back after the year for reinspection on both the roads and the water and sewer?
That's my understanding, yes, ma'am. It came back in 13. Is that when the request was actually made?
That's the one.
Was that 6 years later?
September 13. Apparently the question was asked again, which is why we did the last two punch lists that are in your book. Yeah, so, I mean, to my knowledge, it was never asked again until 13.
Mr. and Ms. Smith, did either of you come back? One of y'all step up. After the initial
did not. But this right here says, this is a bill from Saucy Engineering on 2/25/2008. Said met with Pat Burke, the contractor in Effingham County, to perform final acceptance inspection of the pump station. And then this is a letter from Mr. Patrick Burke to Mr. Lauda, saying that they recommended that everything on this punch list had been finished and that they recommended them accepting the pump station. A lot was put on.
It's in the book.
So that's more like, it was requested that the engineers approved it, it just never made it to the agenda? Is that what?
Again, that's my assumption. It was done in 2008, two years before I was here. But yes, ma'am, it was clearly, it was inspected.
But if it says final,
It was,
is that not final?
Well, that's what I'm saying. There was a final inspection, and then there was 1 year that the developer owned the infrastructure into that 1 year.
final prior to the plat approval.
Correct, because all that was in 2008 when the plat was recorded. So in 2009, it should have came back before the board for final acceptance, and that year is the part that didn't happen.
Yeah, your final inspection is so that you can put it online.
There was a policy in
And then
place,
the final
and after that final, you still had to wait, come back a year
So it
later.
wasn't final. Final doesn't mean
Final
final.
for the purposes of recording.
Okay, but the other thing that we need to make a definite point of is that there was a lock was put on the panel, on the electrical panel box by the county. There was a lock put on the outside gate of the fence by the county. We were not given a key to either one. And if it was not final, I mean, why was there a lock put on it? I mean, how, I mean,
I don't know, that's the problem I have, is locate the lock and who did it. I mean, certainly there was something happened.
and as far as it goes with taxpayers, Frank and I have been taxpayers in this county since 1998. And if you knew the amount that we have paid in taxes in that length of time, you could build a new courthouse. So, you know, that's something to think about. We're not just fly-by-night people. We didn't have to erode. And on the other thing on this road, it's not washed out. You know, there's no washout on the road that we're talking about.
Sinkhole.
Okay? Thank you.
Now, for the record, Commissioner Floyd, I want you to understand, I've had a conversation with Ricky Jeffcoat as well. Ricky told me that it was his understanding that Donald was there and that Donald witnessed it.
That's what it was.
Ricky did not tell me he saw a lock put on there, but he said he thought he knew who may, and I've asked him twice since, and he has yet to provide me with that information. And that was as late as today. So,
Ricky was not there.
and that's what he told me, and I wanted to set the record straight, because it sounded like Commissioner Floyd had talked to him, and Ricky had said he was there and saw a lock put on there, but Ricky was not there.
Dan and Don, I think.
Donald was there, and Donald's son, Matt, was there.
Matt.
Frank and I were there, and I'm not sure who else was there.
Yeah, that's who I was told was there, Donald and Matt. And I know both of these because they've both done water and sewer work for me in subdivisions, and they're good, reputable people, so. That's why I was wanting to find out from them firsthand who saw what. Because it would be a valid point, an important part to me if I knew that there was a county employee that stood there. But also it would seem like, and question them, that was back at this time that it was started up and everything, which was the period that the 1 year started. It was not at the 1 year finish. All of this seemed to happen at the time that everything was pumped, it was drawn down, everything. Then the subdivision plat was approved. It was said, okay, we can record it. You can sell lots. And that's when that 1 year period started. And the 1 year, then at the end of that, nobody ever came back, nobody ever said, hey, would you please accept this? That's the way it seems to me. And have I got it halfway right?
That's what I'm saying is creating an issue at this point, is that every developer that has developed had that 1 year at that time, and it wasn't a smart thing. but they have that 1 year waiting period, rather than being able to give a bond and the county take it immediately. They had that 1 year waiting period. And if you did not bring it back yourself, nothing happened, you just kept owning it forever.
Unfortunately, a lot of lay people that didn't understand that, it just never came back. And some people even thought they had, and they said, you know, when they started building finally, when the economy got a little better, and then VA started, or in some cases USDA, and they started saying, oh, you're on a private road, we can't finance this. Well, then everybody got excited and started saying, well, we need our roads approved, so.
Let me ask this question. There are times right now when the county will go put a lock on a pump station? Is that right?
Yes, we generally keep all pump stations that we own locked. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that you.
Certainly. Yes, ma'am.
But,
We don't lock up private property, no, ma'am.
okay, but I'm asking this question this way, because I think I remember that you guys actually have a lock on the pump station that we own. And so I was just trying to figure out the point of, is it possible that, that didn't mean you took ownership, but you were,
There would be-
you were maintaining it. You had taken over the responsibility for maintenance for a reason, but, why would you put a lock on it otherwise?
The only other reason we would put a lock on a pump station that we didn't own would be in a dual lock scenario where it was very clear that the developer, owner, or whoever had a lock and we had a lock so that both parties could enter the pump station. There would be some circumstances where even though we don't own it, we would still enter it for the purposes of making sure that something wasn't operating improperly and that sewage wasn't spewing all into the creek. So, for example, there are several.
System improvement, not private.
No, that could be very, very.
It could be there too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Laurel Mill is a perfect example. I
So they
mean,
do
we
have a
have.
right to enter, and then if they're to spill it, do they have a right to do anything about that?
In as much as just.
I think the county always has certain emergency powers.
Yeah, especially if there's houses to
Shut it off.
and houses being
Right, we would
Still the
definitely.
one that's connected to your system in some way.
Right, we would definitely be the ones who were held liable by EPD. So EPD would hold us liable for any spillage of sewage to the creek. So therefore, it's been my policy since I've been in charge of the county's water and sewer system that my staff keeps an eye on all pump stations where there is pumping going on, even if we don't own it, because we need to make sure that there isn't sewage pumping into the creek.
And that's why we had to take ownership immediately and require a bond, because we're supposed to own it.
And again, that's why we changed the ordinance. Yes, ma'am. No question.
Timing with what Mr. Mason said, you did say there's a difference in what specs it has to be brought up to now versus where it was. I mean,
I don't have any.
That $40,000 is just.
I don't have any information for you that would say that none of the Effingham County standards that relate to pump stations have changed in any of these intervening time periods.
But the
So,
question was the plan, do you have a copy of the plan?
Well,
Is that
Steve, what I'm
what-
looking at, that's what I'm going to do right now, is trying to get a timeline on this thing. But what I'm looking at is, who was it, Pat Burke? Somebody did a recommendation that it to be approved as it was.
to recommendation that we move forward with the plat, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Pat Burke was the consulting engineer on the, at the
Right, so it had to
time,
be-
not an electrical engineer, but a civil engineer, yes,
To
sir.
an acceptable standard. And this was our consultant, not just on the
Acceptable.
station and what flight parts was in it, but on the station. I'm certain that, you know, things such as the gates and that kind of stuff, he didn't actually know that, but
No, that's what he would have been looking at. He would have been looking at that sort of thing along with the startup, but he wouldn't have been looking at the actual electrical information.
If y'all look on page 17 and 19, you can actually see the comments that he generated. There were 8 of them. And the letter that Ms. Smith has, the one that you're looking at, which was a few pages up, recommending acceptance references this inspection, which is page 17 and 19. You see there's 8 comments.
And those are the type of things.
Yeah, and number 1 is remove the pass-throughs and replace with VFDs, so clearly those are the control panel. And it does, to answer your question, Commissioner Mason, talk about access to weather roads, rocks and so forth, gates, hydrants, hot boxes, overhead lighting. So it appears they looked at more than just electrical, they also looked at cyber type issues
But
also.
that was in '07, and And the
It's in December of 07.
Right.
The other one was February of 08. It was 2 months apart.
Right, that was the first inspection done at the time that the Smiths were asking that the plat be
So
recorded.
those things were noted, and apparently they have been taken care of.
I would assume so.
Those
Since
things-
it references this letter, it says it's acceptable, yes, sir, that would be my assumption.
Right, but if you'll notice, and I'm not trying to call these people into question, but if you'll notice, number 2, remove PVC's pipe and fittings and replace it with specified material. Well, obviously they didn't do that at the vent because it's still PVC to this day. So that was overlooked. And
But that was also the valve vault you're talking about as well.
yes,
So,
Yeah.
that's what he is specifically referring to the valve.
yeah, there's vent string and stainless steel as well.
For what it's worth,
So, you
yes,
know,
they're within a couple of feet of each
yeah,
other, but yes.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm just kind of in a position that developers should be responsible to get it to the point that it was, the date that letter was written on, that acceptance, recommendation. The dollars, we didn't put dollars on all stations back then. Huh?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we did, or yes, you're correct.
Dialers were a requirement for all lift stations, yes, sir. Have been since beginning.
Just some people didn't.
I guess.
Is there a particular one
Huh?
is there a particular one, or we missed one?
I specifically know some, and these are the ones that are in the city of Lincoln, but
It'll be different. Yes.
But regardless, it was recommended for acceptance, and it must have been substantially complete in 08.
It was recommended as substantially complete for approval for the purposes of the plat to be recorded. Yes, sir.
Have you
Absolutely.
figured out how to tie down what that would be and what that would not be? Have you figured that out?
I'm not looking at the plan.
Yeah.
Well, the plans don't have an electrical, and most of the cost of all this is electrical. So I think the pumps need to be, for the amount of time it's been, the pumps need to be checked. We need flight to sign off on them that the pumps are good. However, that has to happen, where the $2,100 seems reasonable for that, but I think flight needs to do that. But all the electrical improvements is what I'm kind of questioning. And just trying to be fair here. I mean, because my position is typically, it's not a secret here, that the developer is responsible for it until somebody else takes it from them, whether they buy it or the county takes it, whatever. But trying to be fair here, I don't know if this list of things is, and when not having an electrical drawing, like we've looked at drawings before, that it says this, and these not having an electrical drawing or approved is one of the big hurdles here.
But the county engineers approved it though, without having an electrical drawing. That's what I mean about we helped create it.
Where were those electrical standards? Are they documented anywhere?
Certainly, there's a set of Effingham County standard specifications and standard details and electrical code issues. And generally speaking, the person who did the inspection, Mr. Cobb, who used to work for Rosser, did most of all the design for Effingham County's stations. So ones that were built by Effingham County, I'm trying to say that correctly. So he's very familiar with what the requirements were and the standards were for Effingham County stations, at that time period.
Well, I'd venture to say we're going to have other roads and things that come before us that probably that developer didn't come back to deed them over, but we have residents living in there. It's going to be another issue.
Yeah,
It's going to be a different issue.
every different scenario is
With
different.
similar
And
there are-
I'm trying to think of something out loud, I think based on some of the conversation that we had earlier, and I don't know if it's the right thing, or I want to get your opinions on it. To me, if you were going to do a special tax district, this is almost easier because it's not different scenarios. And I don't know, if we ended up with a cost of $30,000 or $10,000, or I don't know, what, $40,000, whatever it is, and you divide it by the lots, and you apply it to each lot, swung out over a 5-year period or something like that, we did it. That would divvy up the cost by the lots, and unless they just continue to own all the lots for 5 years, all of the burden of kind of what we helped create, but they also didn't bring it to us, would not be there, but we would get the money back.
Once the lots are sold, there's homeowners who pay that
They
for a period of time.
gotta be paid in taxes, whether, if they retain it, they'll be paying it every year, but the taxes, if the taxes are $349 right now for that many lots, they're under tax right now.
And the alternative would be the cost to make the repairs is put in the sale price of the lot.
And I don't know if we can make that decision tonight, it's just maybe something we can kick around,
Well,
looking for a solution.
I'm hung up on the fact that they didn't come back, that the bottom line is, and this, we're gonna keep running with this, we've got to figure out a way to address the issue. So, what we're talking about here is something that I can see is tolerable. I guess it's not really, I don't know, but we've got to do something. Otherwise, we won't keep putting these off, it just keeps rolling up.
What you gotta remember is that another issue with roads is gonna come, and it's gonna be the same circumstances, but there's gonna be residents living in there, and the dynamic of that will change, however.
Right. Well, but these individuals say, we'll work with that. I don't know if that's something we want to present.
Speaking solely of water and sewer, there are other ones that are like this that have water and sewer issues that like this that are where there are subdivisions where there are people living. So those are going to be even more complicated. This one is actually one of the lesser complicated ones
However,
as it pertains to.
somewhat of a, kind of a, I won't say standard, but kind of thought process of how we're gonna deal with them.
We need to look at it in a comprehensive way, because in those scenarios, those people have already started paying a higher tax even for the house that is getting a service. Hey,
And I'm not saying, I'm just saying, we gotta keep that
you're
back.
not gonna wait all
I'm saying,
in.
you know.
I'm trying to close this deal tonight.
I understand that, but
Well, we're going to wrap this one up and move on to the next, because we're going to have, this is going to be every meeting.
I hope so.
But if we wrap this up the wrong way, we're gonna have to wrap them all up in a way, it is a precedent to some extent.
No question.
I'm just trying to figure out how to move forward.
Well, as for me, as bad as I hate it, I think that this one fell through the cracks and and it wasn't brought back to us in a timely manner. And if I was to get an opportunity to vote on this, I would not vote to accept either one and put this burden on the taxpayer. However, I don't like this number that's put on here by this electrical, because I agree with Commissioner Mason. It's, there is no way that it should cost this much to bring this up to the standards that it was in that day. And I'm a lay person in regards to some of this. Steve's a lot more knowledgeable on some of it, but whenever I read a proposal that says, we propose to furnish labor and materials for pump station electrical upgrade, that's an upgrade. Now, maybe that's just the way it's worded, but if you've got a letter from, which we do, from an engineer that says it's acceptable on that day, as it was, even if they overlooked it, and that was our consultant, and it had PVC pipe there, we shouldn't have to, they shouldn't be required to go back and put a piece of stainless steel in there. We were told that it was acceptable as it was right then. And that's what our consultant told us, and that's what the board then would have based their decision on.
The board would have based their decision to approve the plat, yes, sir.
So, in short, if we can't go back to the plans, and it has specifics on it, and if the plans show it's stainless steel, but it's you can't just go back to the plans and say, you gotta come up with this. But basically, I think it should be, the pump should be tested and functioning properly today. It should be operational. Now, I don't know about your dollars. EPD required me on my private pump lift stations, EPD required me to have $1 on mine. So I don't know if that's an EPD requirement or if it's just county requirement.
In this particular circumstance, it would have been a county requirement.
Okay. But that was a privately owned system. That was just one of the things they required me to put on it.
But what to the dollar, because this is kind of important to me, to the dollar, it wasn't on the final
It
punch.
wasn't
It wasn't on the punch list, and then it was finally accepted, and certainly nobody's went over there and changed the panel and put the dollar on.
Then I don't see how we can require the Smiths to put it on there.
So that's the kind of things, right?
And
You see,
I'll say this about spirit of compromise, because I think, from my perspective, there's errors all the way around, we're just trying to figure out a solution. Like county made errors, you guys made errors, and we're trying to figure out a solution. And to me, one of the things is that, now that the tax bill is $349 for 12 lots, if you're looking at, okay, if you feel we're not being fair with trying to make you pay for some of the stuff that you think you already provided, but yet you're being taxed at that rate, you're actually saving on taxes this year, that maybe if we come up with a halfway point, would be fair for everybody.
And the taxes are not irrelevant here, but the developer did have the option to recombine these lots, because it's been 6 years. It
I'm
could
just
have
saying,
been
I'm
more
saying that
attractive.
we wouldn't benefit now, though,
And rezone.
they're being undertaxed now.
Exactly. So,
If you'd like.
maybe we could say, well, taxes have been paid and all that, yes, I do know that,
But the Board of Equalization didn't always agree to that,
But they were taxed at $200 a lot, and 12 lots, that's $2,400 instead of $300, and that's kind of different than what they're looking to repair that road.
Well, I think the road, as far as mine, we get to the roads, I think the developer should bring the road up and fix the deficit in the road. It has not been brought about by wear and tear, it's not been brought about by use, it is a failure, period. That's my opinion. Well, that's all I've got is an opinion. As far as the pump stations and all of that, I think we should be able to come up with a reasonable, equitable amount that should be required to get this thing to an operational standard. Let them prepare the deeds and us come back and accept both of them and it be done.
I would like to approach.
Yes, sir.
Just one moment, just a minute, respect. Mr. Jeffcoat, as you mentioned, they do work for a lot of people in the county and it's approved by the county. If you folks go along with putting it back where it was that day, I mean, that's sort of what I heard the consensus, you know, where it was approved that day by the county inspectors. I paid an electric bill for several months, so Georgia Power was not in problem with hooking the power to it. Okay, now Mr. Jeffcoat has told me, and I'm sure he probably told you, there's not a whole lot to be done to put it back where it should be. And these big old bills, I agree, that's ridiculous.
It is.
And so, I mean, you know, these people that's working, I mean, hey, you write your own check. But I say we ought, and if you do decide to ask me to put it back, of course, I still say the county should do it. But if you require me to do it, I respectfully ask to get a bid from Mr. Jeffcoat or someone else. I mean, I don't say that since I've got the answer to it, I think I ought to have a right to say who does it.
Well, you're saying for the point of the fact that he is best knowledgeable about what was originally there.
Oh yeah, sure he was. He knew that they did to him and his brother. He come over several times and looked. Now his brother Donald was actually the one that I paid. But now Saucy engineered, said there wasn't a plan. How did an electrician put something together if there wasn't a plan? I'm not an electrician.
Well,
Can you imagine an electrician putting something like that together without a plan?
It's my understanding there's still a set of plans that exist, and I think Ricky has access to them, so.
Well, anyway, that's the thing. I just want to have some, if I've got to do it, I think the county ought to do it because they put the lock on it. Now, one of the county men was there. I think he was working for a company called OMI then that was doing maintenance on the county wasn't actually doing the maintenance on pump stations at that time. And asked he said, okay. So this guy, and I've been knowing him all his life, and he was there. And I'm sure he's the one to put a lock on it, but we don't need to get to that. My wife and I are not
What's
telling
his
you.
name? I've been trying to get a name for this person.
Well,
Yet to get it.
Larry Black.
Larry Black.
Oh, he knows.
I'll rise to that particular mention. That gentleman works for me. That gentleman is my employee. I've spoken to that gentleman on several occasions. That gentleman has told me on no ifs, ands, or buts that he did not place a lock on that lift station. That gentleman has worked for me since he was hired by Effingham, and he never worked for OMI. He worked directly for me since he was hired in 2007. So that's incorrect. Yes, sir.
I would tell you that it's my feeling that good, honest, honorable people can have differences of opinion, so let's just leave that as it is. And,
Well, but again, OMI was doing work for the county, not necessarily for the water and sewer
Not for
department,
the water and sewer
right?
department at that time. That's correct.
Right, not for water and sewer, but they were doing for the county. So Mr. Smith would be reasonable to assume when he's seen OMI people out there to say that they were contracting and doing maintenance and stuff for the county, although we know they weren't technically doing it for the water
And it was not Mr. Blackburn, and correct, not for water and sewer, only for roads and drainage. Yes, sir. At that time.
And Chairman Kessler's point has been that if there was some confusion about when the lot was put on, that created ownership, when you continue to get bills for the road, then maybe a light should have gone off and said, hey, we got to call up there and say, hey, we're not paying this because we don't own it. And so they're just going to continue, you know.
One more little side point.
yes, sir.
It seemed to be like a lapse of memory, but it stayed on my answer machine for months. I finally put it off because Mr. Lyota called my house and asked, could we, I was not in, he put it on the answer machine, said, we got a pump that's failed somewhere in the county and you have one like it. Can we use that pump? And Mr. Blackburn, they went there and they said they couldn't get in. And they, somehow or another, they never got the pump. They did not. But Mr. Lyota called me and asked me, could they use that pump? No, he wanted to know if I had built a house. I told him no, I wasn't using the pump. And if they wanted to borrow it, they could. Now my wife, if you called her, I'm telling you the truth, fellas. I mean, if you stick to the truth, you won't have much problem.
And he is correct. That definitely occurred.
But that clarifies that if we felt we owned it, we would have just gotten.
Right. Oh, exactly. Right. There's no question. Right. That was the purpose for my call, was to ask him to borrow his personal property. Yes.
You knew it was sitting there not being used.
So yes, no question.
But if Steve would have thought we owned it, he would have just gone and gotten it.
That's exactly right. I knew very well that we didn't own it, and that's why I called and asked his permission to borrow his private property.
It shows the confusion the whole time.
No question.
All right. Y'all got anything else?
No, I heard that's all.
So we table it and figure that the new possible cost, I'll let them get a bill at the rejected.
What I would like to hear is a motion to table this to our next meeting, and during that time for us to get a realistic cost approach for doing this from Mr. Jeffcoat or others than this one here, to bring that back to the.
That's not our responsibility, right?
It's not our responsibility to do it.
That's what I'm saying, okay. I just want to make sure everybody's.
So that
We can
this,
check somebody to look at it.
so that this board can consider this. I mean,
Do you think our next meeting or the one after that? I just want to be sure everybody has enough time to, so that we're not scrambling on this.
second meeting in February.
Well, further on your agenda's consideration to cancel the first meeting, so the
I'll
board
just
so
say
chooses
second.
to do
Second
so.
meeting in
I'll
February.
just say
It'll
second.
be the end of
It'll
February.
be the end of February.
In case we don't cancel the first one, I'll just say second February. I'll say, March, there'll only be one.
February 18th is the day of that meeting.
Okay, February 18th.
Is there some particular guidance from the board on what we want Mr. Jeffcoat to price?
That's what I'm saying.
Bring it back to where it was, and we have a punch list.
I think we handle the traffic signs.
Yeah, the traffic signs, I think wholeheartedly belongs to the county. Yeah, they were.
Yeah, clearly they bought them, we were on this aisle, they were more.
They were stolen,
than
We
we
got
had
some
time.
issue, we'll actually taken care of.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be appropriate for Ricky Jeffcoat to come sit down and talk with you guys as far as trying to correlate what it is he's going to price? And because I thought there probably needs to be a conversation where we try to get down to what was then.
Well, the road's very easy, I mean, we can point at it and say this is a failure.
Yeah,
It's
You want to do this, I'll be available, if you can set up in one afternoon, I'll be glad to meet Ricky down there and
whoever else, you know, if one of y'all want to come.
Well, is there a
And-
plan? Is there a plan?
And let's get a reasonable idea of what the station is, what it needs to get it back to, a reasonable expectation of what it was at the time that Pat Burke recommended approval.
Well, with the board's permission, I would
Then Ricky.
I would do the same thing in conjunction with you if you,
Yeah, but then Ricky would know what the price.
Yeah, we have construction plans, we don't have an electrical plan. Now, there was one done somewhere else that wasn't submitted to the county, we're not privy to that information. Now, we do not have an electrical plan. We do have construction documents, and they reference county standard details for the construction of that station, but we have nothing on
I
that.
believe this, Ricky's gonna have a perspective from memory as to what was required. And that conversation, I think, probably needs to take place with
Well-
staff and engineering so they can batter it back.
I mean,
and this thing is here. I mean,
that's what I'm
it's
saying.
there.
And what I'm getting
It
at
was
is,
approved.
unless somebody took it in their mind to go down there and take out the stainless pipe and put a PVC one back, then you would make the assumption that what's there is there. Yeah, what's there was there.
Unless it's damaged.
Unless it's damaged. If it's broken through the years, and then certainly I think the developer is willing to step up and take care of things like that. But I don't think that we can ask them to do more than was done the day that that letter was written.
I think we should make a motion that staff meets with Ricky out there, and anybody that wants to go, so it's not a majority, can be great. So I think we need to have staff involved.
Can we go?
Oh, certainly.
Absolutely.
I would expect you to do that.
Yeah, I'll be there. Don't worry.
I'm talking.
Set that up, and if you can, set it up in the afternoon. Would be better than after 3.
And y'all spoke, I know you said Don was the one that did this, we're not talking him, we're talking Rick.
Rick.
Okay.
We'll probably be there.
Well, I don't think Don's doing it anymore.
I just want to get it straight in my head, I'm gonna call it Rick and say.
And quite honestly, I know them both, I've known them for years. Rick is the one who wants to do this.
Okay, you ready for a motion?
You ready to give me one, I'm ready for it.
I'll make it, and it's fine. If it needs adjusting, so please speak. Okay? I'll make a motion that we ask the owners of the development to have Ricky Jeffcoat work on an adjusted price in which county staff is included in the meeting, commissioners may be present, and that we have that presented to us to vote on at our February 18th meeting for the work that needs to be done.
Can we amend that?
Covering the water, sewer, and road
Right,
as two separate items that are covering both. Which is separate.
to bring those items to the standard that
Standard
it would
and word
have
at a
been.
time. The level.
Before we go any further, is there any issue with us naming the contractor? I mean, I think maybe for us, the contractor, their choice, but, you know, I don't think we can tell them who they have to use.
They've asked, they requested it, so I'm doing it based on their request, and they own the property, it's not our.
No problem?
I would say Mr. Jeffcoat or whomever.
Yeah, Mr. Jeffcoat or whoever.
Ms. Smith.
But,
Suitable of their choosing.
yeah,
I think it may have been on his paying for it, because I don't know, in our purchasing policy, that we can just go out and do that.
right.
Maybe a violation of our purchasing policy.
Well, at this point,
We're not.
it's for fact finding.
We're not,
We're
I'm thankful.
Yeah.
We just want a cost.
Okay.
We decide to pay it.
you
We're
got that
asking them to
motion?
bring us a proposal for what it would take to put
For them
it back
to,
to,
for them to do it.
right, put it back to how it was at the time Mr. Burke inspected it.
Correct.
And I would say,
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? So carried. That motion was technically for item number 2.
I can do it again.
Did you say for both?
She did.
Yeah, she said for the.
So can we include that for item number 1 as well?
Okay.
All
Our
right.
motion was on both items of that.
Fine, so we will consider both tabled to February 18th, at which time that information should be provided to the board for consideration.
That was.
Mr. and Ms. Smith, y'all are getting to be regulars here.
Yeah, we know each other, don't
We do.
we? I know where to have fun.
We'll be seeing you out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank y'all. All right, everybody good?
first, new business? She's been sitting out here all this time and.
Well, the time is 7 o'clock.
It really don't matter because planning board thing is a straightforward thing
It'll
too.
take 1 minute.
It'll take 1 minute to do planning board.
George is saying 1 more minute.
All of them just-
Okay.
60 seconds, clock is ticking.
All right, first item on our planning board presentation. Planning board recommends approving an application by Nace Ariel Mara to rezone 1.28 acres located at 890 Egypt Ardmore Road from AR1 to AR2, map number 245, parcel number 13 in the 3rd district.
Yes, sir. This property is owned by Mr. Roper. He wants to give a 1.2 acres to his niece, Ms. Mara, and this is a plat of the property, and this is a plat of what he would like to create, which is another square back in the back of his larger property. The applicant is not here this evening, but he was at the planning board meeting, and there were no objections there, and the planning board and staff recommend approval.
He put it right in the middle of all that other land?
Yes,
There's access to it?
yes, I'll show you. This is the plat he intends to have with the 60-foot access coming from the road, and he has the 2 small lots in the back. Why he put them back there, I don't know, but that's his choice.
I have a question. Okay. What happens now, 5 years from now, this thing gets approved, and now there's a 60-foot access road, and then somebody else comes along there and wants to put 3 more lots, and all of a sudden, we've got another 60-foot access road in this county.
You could put 2 more places on it.
We're allowed to have 3 lots off an access easement, and anyone can do it, and there are many, many of those throughout the county.
You can't.
It's by
3, you can't do it.
Number?
No more than 3 per ordinance.
Yes. So they could put 1 more off of that access
So,
easement.
so theoretically, if what you're saying happened, they would have to come in and improve the road. That's to build the road, right? They rezone it, make it a full subdivision, and then build the road.
If they wanted to add more than,
They wanted to
And do
go.
it.
If you wanted more than 3,
correct.
That's what you.
county specifications.
I had to ask the question on it.
What the county doesn't prohibit is him putting another 60-foot access easement on the other side of his property.
Yeah.
Right.
There's other options.
Just,
There are places that they've done that.
yes, correct.
And then 2 off the road.
All right. Any questions or discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
It's a public hearing, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Anybody here wish to speak for or against? Now I'll entertain my motion. I was told there wasn't anybody here.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve this with planning board and staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? After being here a few years, I'll get it right. All right. That ends our planning board presentation.
Thanks for sticking around, George.
All right. First item on new business. Consideration to approve an agreement to provide fiscal agent services to Effingham County Family Connection, communities and schools of Effingham County.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Elaine Spencer, the Director of Effingham County Family Connection, Communities and Schools, and I'm here to ask the Effingham County Board of Commissioners to please continue to be the fiscal agent for Family Connection and Communities and Schools.
Any questions from the board? Motion?
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed?
Gets easier every year.
So carried.
I'm sorry?
It gets easier every year, doesn't it?
Every year. Thank you very
I
much.
see somebody smiling at
It's educational. That's what
Item number 2 under new business, consideration to approve the release of the pre-engineering for tilt panels for the sheriff's office. Mr. Kovac.
We'd like to request this item be moved to after, or to be heard in conjunction with new business item number 15.
You would like for it to be heard
Oh, change order?
Yes, sir.
in conjunction with item 15?
Is that what you said?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
15 now, and both that will.
Do we need to do it now, or? We'll wait for
You
this.
do that at the restroom first.
We'll do it again, I think it'd be easier. But that let you have all your fun. Wait in suspense.
Any break?
Only if we're gonna take on 15. First, either way. Okay, that's okay with me, either way.
All right. Can I have a motion to move item number 2 of the new business to be heard in conjunction with number 15?
I'll make a motion that we move item number 2 to be heard in conjunction with item 15.
Second.
Motion and a second to move. All in favor? None opposed? So carried. Item number 3, travel. Consideration to approve commissioner travel for the 2014 Capital Connection Conference. Who wants to talk?
All right, Mr. Chairman, you guys have been hearing about this for a couple of weeks. It's an annual event held by ACCG. The Capital Connection Conference is going to be held at the Marquis in Atlanta. The dates are February 3rd and February 4th. During this conference, there was a discussion of legislation affecting local government. At the present time, Commissioner Loper is the only commissioner planning to attend.
All right, so the only commissioner we're talking about is Commissioner Lowe. This is a total expense of, roughly $1,000.
No. She'll come to conference to registration for 650.
$765 plus mileage, plus food,
That's correct.
plus per diem. That's gonna be $1,000.
Yes, sir.
You go this every year, don't you? Don't you go this pretty much every year?
We go.
I have been to the last 8 of them.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ready to go into Atlanta. Consideration to approve excuse me, let me get the tongue straightened out. Clerk travel for the Georgia Municipal and County Clerks Education Conference for Ms. Stephanie.
Yes, sir. This is travel for me to receive my clerk certification. It will be held February 2nd, which is a Sunday, and it ends on February 4th, and it will be held at the UGA Hotel and Conference Center in Athens.
This is required training for you.
This is required training for county and municipal clerks.
All right, any other questions? Motion?
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Boy, y'all don't fight over it. Everybody wants to get rid of you and send you to Athens. How about that? I have a motion and a second. I guess we'll give Mr. Phil the motion.
Make that one.
I think he won.
I didn't.
Who got a second?
Hey, Reggie.
I think I second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Stephanie going there? You would be back on Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Yes, sir. The training goes until 4 on Tuesday, so.
Gotcha.
Well, the meeting don't start till 5.
I can make it.
All right, item number 5, consideration to cancel the February 4th, 2014 Board of Commissioners meeting. As we have already enacted, Ms. Stephanie will be gone for training. Mr. Loper will be gone for the Capitol Conference. So we have an option whether we want to have an assistant clerk or someone else clerk for that meeting. I asked Toss to poll the department heads and see if there's anything pressing that we thought would be amiss if we skip that meeting.
The closest we have is Mr. Kobeck, and I believe he said he was okay to the 18th. He's writing and not speaking.
Really?
Possibly, that was the, yeah, possibly.
The only thing really pressing is jail construction. We are on the timeline, as y'all know, they'll be moving into the new jail. On the 1st, we will actually take it over, we'll play with it for roughly 2 weeks. On the 15th, we plan on moving inmates. We want to go directly into the construction for the sheriff's office. And there are some lead times, there's some furniture that needs to be purchased and some other things that inadvertently missed this meeting. So there is some time we believe when we make to the 18th, we will be okay. I
If
think.
it became an issue, we could have a special call meeting for that one item we had to.
Well, that 2 purchases, data cabling, the furniture, and possibly number 15, we'll have some discussion on that.
Make it together, it said special call.
Correct.
If we have to.
But the only thing pressing is the jail. It's all revolving around the jail, and it's only, a small little project we have going on.
In the past, the board, I think, has moved from Tuesday to Thursday.
Right.
Just for your consideration, I will not be in town that Thursday, but that does not mean that the vice chairman cannot take care of this meeting.
Or if something come up, it had to be done, you couldn't poll the commissioners. I mean, we all know what's happening anyway. I mean, if we do it to the jail, we all aware of it, but you couldn't do that.
Why don't we just cancel the Tuesday meeting, and if there's a need, we'll call a meeting for Thursday.
That's what I said.
That would be my recommendation.
Yeah.
We good?
We'll be sitting by the 20th.
I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make a motion that we cancel that meeting and maybe call a special call for that one item.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed?
I said for that one item, so we can add like 3 or 4 other things in there for other people not.
I understand. I understand.
Correct.
You
Depending
don't
on,
have a special call meeting and
Stick a bunch of stuff in there.
sneak a bunch of stuff in there.
Aw.
All right, next item, consideration to approve a resolution commending the ACCG on 100 years of service.
Yes, sir, you pretty much said it all. I received an email from a rep of the ACCG requesting that each county accept a resolution for their 100-year anniversary.
Have the commissioners read the proposed resolution that's in the book? That was drafted by the ACCG for that specific purpose. Thank y'all. If it meets with the approval, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve all in one.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Next item, consideration to approve a request for a budget amendment for the prison staffing quality improvement program. Ms. Joanne, you've been fairly quiet for the last week or so.
Me?
Yeah. I said fairly.
Because it environment, it takes up all the time.
We won't go there.
No comment. The item that's before you this evening has to do with the accounts that we have moved underneath the control of the Board of Commissioners.
Pull the mic around there.
I'm sorry.
I see people leaning.
Okay,
Speak
sorry.
with
Is that better?
It's better.
Look at Zoomers.
Yes, ma'am. The item that's before you this evening has to do with those accounts that we've moved under the direction of the Board of Commissioners. As such, we need to amend our budgets to be able to receive those funds and expense those funds. In this particular case, the one that's before you on new business number 7 is the prison staffing and quality improvement program. Those line items have been set up to receive the revenue. You will see those in the facts and findings, along with the expense for both of those accounts. In reviewing the one for the QIP revenue and inmate recreation commission, I would like to adjust that $15,000 up to $22,500, having reviewed the last 3 years worth of funds running through there. Other than that, these are strictly budget amendments and changes. The revenue that is being received will be what is used to expense those items for the inmate rep. And if you'll give me a minute, I'll tell you what those items will be. Those items generally cover our costs for the GED test. They cover ID and supplies. They include microwaves for the dorms, medical supplies for the dorms, ironing boards, work boots, paint, and different supplies that are used for the inmates as a whole.
This is what we talked about in the previous meeting where we're bringing this over basically so we have proper review.
That's correct. And that's under your signature.
So this exists somewhere else, we're just moving it.
That's correct. Currently, this is, if you recall, the accounts that we discussed, that we reviewed, and that are not currently under the board's signature. I'm making budget amendments so that we have this within our budget. We're bringing the revenue in and expending it through the general fund.
In this year's budget, we will create it in our budget.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Is this something that was addressed in the audit or not?
Excuse me?
Have this item been addressed in the audit or not?
In some aspects, yes, Michelle.
But not directly, correct?
Correct.
I mean, the concept of the signatures and
Yes.
that, but not
Stress within
directly
our-
this account.
That's correct. It's part of the review of our financial policies.
Gotcha. Any questions or clarification needed from any board member? I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the request.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the request, which is alternative number 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Next item, consideration to approve a request for a budget amendment for the Senior Citizen Craft Activity Program.
Before we spend a lot of time like this,
Yes, sir.
I would like to table this until our meeting in February 18th. I've had somebody talk to me and I want to find out some other stuff before I make a decision on it.
Okay.
There's no reason that would be a problem at the time.
No, I spoke with Ms. Margaret the other day. Now, let me say this thing. I think she's already closed this account.
She has it.
Okay.
So there's no reason it would be time sensitive.
No, my understanding was she was going to do that last week or first of this week.
Well, I'm saying she has it. I'm pretty sure she has it. I'll change that.
Yes, sir.
Reggie, can I accept that as a motion to move this to our February 18th meeting?
To the next meeting, yes. Yeah, the 18th. We have one before that. We'll bypass the 18th. So the 18th of February.
I have a motion to table this to the February 18th meeting in a second.
The second is.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So tabled. Next item, consideration to approve an amendment to the 2014 Aging Services Contract.
Yes, sir. What you have before you is an updated contract. As I mentioned at the last meeting, they have reduced our funding. That is based on the reductions that they are receiving from the federal government in part. And so we have about a $14,000 decrease in our funding at this point. We are looking right now to see how we can best cover that loss in funds. Right now, we have about $7,000 as we have spoken about in the past within that budget to cover the direct cost of those 2,000 meals. However, that does not cover necessarily the employee time and so forth that's generally figured within the cost of these meals that we're getting reimbursed for. So we are covering the direct cost, but we will have to make some adjustments within the next budget to cover any difference that may be within the next fiscal year.
This is the same item this board approved for emergency use when we thought that because of the government shutdown, we were going to have to expend. So it's the same $7,000 funds we
That's
approved
correct.
to use that we didn't have to.
In this particular case, they have now made it, basically, they have given us what those figures are going to be.
Last year, they cut the CRC in the coastal district, they cut it $1 million. This year, they have already cut it over $300,000. So that's the reason for this information.
I think this board is going to have to come up with a longer term program, but this is a short term emergency fix.
We actually have just submitted what they call our UCM, which is our cost allocation to them for approval for this next year. So we're awaiting their review of that and approval of that. We did so based on servicing the same number of meals and are hoping that this funding is restored, but we don't know that for sure. So that will be one of those things that we will have to look at as it comes closer to budget time and their budgets to see what's going to happen.
But we have the alternatives 1, 2, and 3 is presented tonight for us to take action on. So.
That's correct.
We have a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
A motion and a second to approve. And I presume when you said approve as submitted.
That's
correct.
Alternative number 1.
Yes.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Consideration to approve a request for budget protocol to use funds from insurance proceeds regarding sheriff vehicle.
Yes, sir. This is a request that has come from the sheriff's office. As you know, we've discussed in the past that we currently budget for auto accidents. We also budget for revenue that's received from the proceeds of the insurance when a car is totaled and so forth. Right now, we never necessarily know exactly what that amount's going to be. And so this is a request from the sheriff to basically review those funds on a quarterly basis to look and see exactly how much we've had to pay out versus how much those proceeds are. And for his ability to use the net of those for additional equipment or for replacing a car.
Which means if he had 2 cars get totaled, he had no money to replace them. And so then we would want to see if he could use that money to replace those cars once we paid any expenses such as deductibles and things that have to be paid.
Correct.
Why don't we just keep that money when he needs something, when we can, because he usually runs over his budget anyway, and we can use that to.
Because we're paying to replace something he just lost. He lost a car, and insurance gave him money back for the car, and we're going to keep that money?
They didn't give it to him, they gave it to us. We bought the car.
But it's to replace it. If your car gets wrecked, you need to replace it. And so if he has a car that a deputy's driving and it gets in a wreck, it needs to be replaced, and he doesn't have funds to do that. We haven't even been budgeting cars.
Joanne?
Yes.
How many we buy this year for? How many new cars we buy this year for?
But if one is red, it's got to be replaced.
It's a reasonable request.
We bought a lot more than
Just let me be clear.
Yes, sir.
He has a $2,500 deductible, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, so if he wrecks a vehicle, $2,500 right off the bat. If it's one of these newer vehicles, then it's not going to be that bad of a hit. But if it's a Crown Vic, then an older Crown Vic, then basically $2,500, the value of the vehicle's not worth anything. I'm just trying to tie this $10,000.
That's basically what was a placeholder that we generally use somewhere around, 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 wrecks. So we're figuring $2,500, a pop. Now, some of those, it depends upon how the insurance necessarily does it. But, I've seen repairs that we've done that necessarily are $800 or $900 that don't even meet the $2,500 versus simply us, chipping in that $2,500 against as the deductible.
And that's why quarterly we'll just take our money out first. The $10,000 is really the relevant, it's just a.
It's a place.
Yes.
It
And
has been.
the $10,000 is going to be a drop in the bucket.
Depends on how many cars they total.
And my issue is, and I don't mind making this public, my issue is when we have a car wreck that's not even in our county. I mean, it's because somebody's driven one home somewhere, not even here. Or if they're off on a school function somewhere that I still haven't figured out yet how that happens. I mean, I'm trying to.
That's a separate issue.
But we have no jurisdiction over where they drive these vehicles, but yet if they wreck one, we're expected to replace it.
We have to replace it.
I understand.
That's a separate issue where you have a disagreement with the sheriff on how he handles that.
Yeah, but he does it, if he wrecks a car, then he shouldn't get extra money because we had to replace that car through insurance.
There's no extra.
The difference is this, is that in the past, as Mr. Limber has said, whatever that net difference was, if it was more, if it was less, the county basically fronted that. Sometimes we received more money from, a car, sometimes we received less.
But we're not guaranteeing a front. We're giving an insurance rebate back.
Correct. I'm just going through the difference between what we were doing and what this is. Basically, at this point, what they're asking us is to review on a quarterly basis what that difference is. I don't know that there will necessarily be a difference. It is a hit and miss between exactly what happened and whether or not we're getting reimbursed for it. Reviewing it on a quarterly basis, I think, is what he's requesting, and the use of those funds. Now, whether or not the board simply wants to review that on a quarterly basis and then make that decision, I think, part of the process is that we simply review it so that if there is a car that needs to be replaced, that it's on the radar.
But the request is, okay, maybe
Are
I'll.
you saying the request is just to review?
No, I'm saying whether or not you validate the fact that he can use those funds, or whether or not it's something that is reviewed on a quarterly basis, to me is what needs to be.
What I'm saying, we could use those funds on something else. If he has a fender bender that's less than $2,500, this money, we could spend it fixing that car down at Harold's Body Shop instead of giving it to Jimmy for him to spend whatever he wants to on it.
I understand. I think the difference is that we have never reviewed it in that manner. And I think what Jimmy was trying to say was that there are times in which he does lose cars due to those cars being totaled, and as such, needs to replace those.
I think we can designate a separation. If the separation is a fender bender, my understanding is his request is about when he loses a car. So if the motion needs to say the word total, because that's what I understand his request to be, is that he's concerned about when he loses a car, how does he replace that car? Because he's guaranteed nothing. And so
We
what do you
replace his cars, Vera.
How so?
Sometimes he has money, if he gets into drugs, he buys a couple cars himself. When they have a drug bust or something, he does buy some cars on his own. Yes, he does.
Well, no, not necessarily though. Just because they have a wreck and total vehicle don't necessarily mean that we automatically just go buy a new car for them.
Well, I know that.
And what he's talking about, I think, is a one step further than what y'all were saying, is if it's a total loss, the insurance company is going to replace the car or part of the car, the value of.
They're going to give us the value of the car.
But that value, it ain't just the car that's lost. It's all the electronics in the car that's lost too. And I don't think all that stuff's in the insurance.
Yes, it is. We get back the total value of the car. The difference is that.
Plus the computers and all
what I'm
that
trying to
stuff.
make sure of that everybody understands is in the past, we have used those funds to cover the different wrecks that we've had that are not paid out, where we have $2,500 or $1,000 and so forth. So for us to simply take it out of the budget means that we're not covering that direct cost with our revenue. However, what he's asking for is to use the net of that, as I understand it, so that if we're getting revenue in, somebody's totaled a car, let's say we've totaled 2 cars, and it's $16,000 that we got for those 2 cars. And let's say we paid out 2 deductibles of $2,500. Then we have an expense of $5,000 and we received revenue of $16,000. So what he's asking for is the net of that.
So
to be
there's
able to
no funding from this board.
He's,
to be able to replace.
he's looking for a way to not be in such a card deficit. And what it should actually do for us is make us not have to buy 19 cars at a time or 12 cars at a time, because he's lost 2 this year and 3 that year and 4 the next year, and all of a sudden he's down on cars.
So he might be able to get enough out of all of them to buy one more.
He may have 2 totals and get 1 car out of it, but he's still going to be down as much as he's been down, and it's a reasonable request in my opinion.
But there's no funding from this board.
The funding is this. In the past, as Mr. Loper has said, when we got that $16,000, that went into the general fund, okay? Well, we weren't counting on 16,000, we were counting on this net 10, okay? So the difference is that we may have received in more funding than we necessarily thought we were gonna have to pay out. So he's asking for that difference. He's asking for that revenue that would normally just increase the general fund revenue.
So, but he could get that money anyway, if he needs something, we get it for him anyway.
5 vote every time, and he wants to ensure that he's not down so many cars, because he got a severe.
This is, he just wants some more control of not to rotate,
He wants a, let me put it this way, he wants a full accounting of any revenue we receive versus any expenditures for accidents. And the net difference, if there is a net difference, okay?
It's returned to his office.
Is returned to his ability to use it.
It just sounds appropriate, I mean, really.
Just like at home, if you lose your car, you need one.
We have a fund every day for him anyways. I just figured that'd be a saving account for us.
I guess to say it shortly is, he wants to get it automatically instead of having to come ask for it.
You're right.
Okay.
And he knows he can get it quarterly, so that he can go ahead and replace some vehicles.
And the issue there is many times if we wait till the end of the year, we cannot necessarily do something within that 30 days or 45 days, depending upon whether it's a new car, whether it's something that has to be
I know a couple
ordered.
of years ago, he actually mentioned to me, he said, look, with the amount of cars that we've lost this year for derricks and whatever, and for whatever reasons, but so, he said, for the amount, he said, I could take the difference. He said, I could have bought a couple cars. He said, I wouldn't have to ask you for these. He said, so where's this money going? And at that time, I was like, where is this money going?
Well,
It goes back.
Good point.
It goes back in as revenue to the general fund, is where it goes. And so when you're looking at the general fund revenues, it's part of those revenues that we didn't count on receiving that year.
I'm all for him not having it on aspects.
No other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve alternative number 1.
Say,
No motion and a second, all in favor? Any opposed? The record shows Commissioner Loper opposed.
Are we giving more than
But even with that
actually, there's a
acquisition,
clearer accounting of the same thing we're doing. It's just
It won't be more like less.
accounting.
okay. We got consideration to approve. Nope. That's all we use, Ms. Joanne.
Yes, sir.
All right, we're gonna take about a 15-minute recess. All right.
No longer in charge tonight.
Mr. Thomas, I guess you up next. Consideration to approve a professional services agreement for consulting services for the Board of Elections.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, on July 23rd, the board voted to enter into a professional services agreement with the chamber, and at that time, it was a one-year agreement that began basically August the 1st of 13, expiring August the 1st of 14. Chamber, we have typically paid our dues, and the chamber would prefer to continue to do it this way, pay for a professional services agreement. in January rather than in July. And we did so last year too. There was not an overlapping payment. We paid in January. This agreement was entered into in July, effective August 1. So to renew it now would have us paying in January for 1 year and only 6 months left on the agreement, or actually less than 6, 4 months left on the agreement. So what this agreement is that you have before you tonight is the exact same agreement with a statement added that supersedes any previous agreement and changes the date from January 1 to January 1. Other than that, it is unchanged.
So we've already paid 6 months for next year, so we don't know. So if we want to do that, all we'd have to do is pay them $2,250, is that right?
No, so we paid in January of 13 for the year 13, for January through December of 13. They're now asking for 14, the calendar year 14.
We paid in June or July?
No, sir, we paid in January. The agreement was there in January.
Contract in the middle of the year.
That's correct. But we had already paid in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we did not repay in July.
So this sets it straight.
Math is right.
Yes,
So it
ma'am.
started in July, right?
Exactly. What we should have done, Commissioner Logan, was had a 6-month agreement, then renewed for a year, is what should have happened. It was an oversight on my part. I did not realize that the contract date and the payment date were
So the real question, before the board is whether or not to enter into, continue in an agreement for professional services with the Chamber of Commerce for the cost of $4,500 per year.
We currently have an agreement, however, the payment lag, so it's sort of a quasi-weird state at this point. Yes, sir, that is certainly a consideration. If the board wishes to continue that agreement, I believe this is what needs to happen, that allows the dates.
Board has feelings?
Well,
Comment?
we got a lot of other things that we do not give any money to, and we got some listed that in the back. So I don't see where we get $4,500 out of it myself.
I also included a budget for Department 51 in there. The reason I did that was what you just said, Commissioner Loper. If you'll look at the very bottom of page 6 of 6 of your material, it's lumped as fireworks, OFM, and chamber is one line item. In the past, I believe there was more funding allotted than the 4,500, and there was some discretion on the board of what we gave to. As you can see, we currently have 45, so if we pay that, there's no dollars left for anything else on those other 2 lines. I just want the board to be aware of that.
The only reason we entered into this agreement was to get what we had been doing already legal, to make that legal.
That's correct.
And so,
But
with
see,
that said, we may not, that, if we don't continue this, we may not be continuing those things. So if we don't, those things are things like election days and things like that, that's where the money's.
Yeah, that would certainly be a consideration of the board, but again, I just want to point out that there will be zero funding left in that category.
this board took action to approve a hotel motel tax, and whenever I said I was for that, I made it clear at that time with the Director of Chamber of Commerce that I thought that would relieve us from needing to pay them. But the next thing was we got this professional services contract, which this board approved. I would still think that the hotel motel tax should be sufficient for their funding. I personally am not in favor of it, but.
Well, and also a lot of things they got listed in here, a lot of that's for the IDA, which we give them. They get 2 meals every year to do this.
That's a different issue. That's by law, so we can't.
I know that, but what I'm saying, some of the things that the chairman's got listed on here, the IDA does that.
I understand that. I understand that.
I think it's important we support our chamber.
I was just making my.
I would say, I agree with you on the hotel motel, that 1 day in May, I don't think right now.
That's my opinion.
And this is an annual agreement, it's not something we have to continue on, if it ever comes to that point. The hotel motel fix it up. But, the things that we agreed to that they're going to take care of it, such as the wedding days and stuff like that. I'm with Ms. Jones. I remember this is why we did it, was to try to make sure that there wasn't any legal issues with the way the money was given. And they had the, what was it, 501, the one just a C3 or some other special designation, and they were the ones that could do that.
So we can't give money to anybody else?
There was nobody else that met that standard. It was a special, it wasn't just 501c3 or something.
It was C6, but that was the hotel.
Whatever
This
it
was
was.
part of something that covered the old Effingham days appropriately.
Where do you see that they're going to support all that?
They're not going to continue.
They're not.
And when I have questioned that, because that was the purpose of the hotel motel tax, that I thought that was a way for all of these entities to be taken care of legally. I don't see where that's being done.
I don't even, consider that, though, at this point, like Steve said, replacing the chamber membership, or not membership.
But even some other entities come and say,
Because that would have really negated what we were trying to do with the hotel
go to the
motel.
chamber for that. If we support the chamber, then.
Well, the question is before the board whether to enter into this agreement or continue, whatever way you want to look at it, and whether the county gets $4,500 worth of value from these items A through O that this contract spells out will be done. I mean, this is a contract to do certain things. So do the taxpayers get $4,500 worth of value for their money spent?
I don't think so.
And I don't think so. I'm gonna have to.
Leadership retreat, yeah, that's, they can do away with that, they can have that, they'll need a retreat center somewhere. Not have it go down the ocean somewhere.
Because most of this is about entertainment. And I realize it's the normal course of government and business, but I got a lot more important things I can spend $4,500 for this county.
I think if the chamber puts a lot of effort to support this community, and I think we need to support the chamber. Right, we're looking at what the value is. We just agreed to spend $1,000 to send you to Atlanta.
You didn't have to.
No, I didn't.
I don't agree with that either, but.
So
But I
that's,
supported it. But I supported it because I'm thinking you would bring back something to share.
well, I've shared a lot and I've helped this county a lot since I've been a commissioner.
That's right, and I'm saying, I think the chamber does too, and I think I make a very good effort.
Well, where I seen fireworks and ordinance was in the funding, the Department 51, that's where I seen that, that's why. It's not in the actual agreement.
It's not in the agreement, but it would be my intention if those things come to us, obviously, like go to the chamber.
That's exactly right, that's what I was getting at. But we have spent that money in the past on those things, and we're basically just saying here, I guess the short of it is, we're saying here, chamber, handle these things. This is the money that we've allocated for that, including our membership, whatever you want to call it, and handle these things. And
We could even ask them to accept an amended agreement that adds P&Q that states they support the Old Effingham Days and fireworks in some way. They wouldn't have to give a specified dollar amount. We could add that.
I asked for that before and I did not get it.
Well, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
They've never not supported the Old Effingham Day, so it's not, no.
So it's probably a problem for them to accept the amended contract, you think? And then that way we're clear that that's
I
our
do not
intention.
support Old Effingham Days. The chamber does not support Old Effingham Days.
No, they have, they don't
And
do
we
it.
have, and we're taking our money, and basically going to them with it, because that was the whole point of making it legal, that was the
They do
whole.
Oktoberfest.
Our dues, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, Joanne, our dues was $4,500 a year. That was our dues,
Yes, sir.
which was illegal. So then we entered, but a county can enter into a professional services agreement with an organization such as the chamber. So that's when this started. So we're still spending the same amount of money. Call it.
But it wasn't the dues that was illegal, right?
Dues are, yeah, we cannot,
I don't think it was the dues, it was the, I don't think.
The part that was illegal was giving money to private entities without
With no
without
stipulations
agreement.
of what you're doing in the term.
So in any cases in which we were doing that, that was inappropriate and is clear.
Regardless.
I'm
Yeah, that's, I mean.
not sure about the, I'm not sure about the dues.
Right.
They cleaned it up. But I guess the question would be, do you guys have an interest in adding P&Q and adding that they would support those items? If we don't put a dollar amount, then it's still in their control as to how much they support it. But at least it would show them our intention, we'd like for them to.
And it's probably not fair to have this conversation because this is just amending a contract that, and they're not here to talk about, you know, to.
I would say it's not fair to turn it down. That
Well,
would-
yeah, it's fair to have a conversation.
Well, when Mr. Locke asked if he should be here or not,
The
I
answer,
told him I didn't know if it was necessary, I apologize. If
That's what I mean, but I mean, that's
Any
fine.
questions on it?
I would go on record as saying this, if anybody ever asks us, should they be present for something that's about them, say,
Say yes.
absolutely.
yeah.
Be present.
Well, my fault, I did not do that on this occasion, and he's not here.
Always.
So. But he did ask,
And if
so.
it's approved, everyone, will they still leave
I
that?
just want to make it.
And again, I presented this amended contract to him without any amendment, so he certainly, I'm not,
Understand.
there's nothing indicating he's opposed to doing that.
Right.
We're basically adding 6 months on to something we've already approved, if we do approve it.
Is that right?
Is that
Well,
right?
we're adding the year. We're in.
Well, no,
We have an agreement.
we have a one-year agreement that we're in.
Through August,
now.
so
We're already obligated to.
Your comfort levels do not change the agreement because of that, because we're trying to, you don't want to alter something,
Midstream.
and I'm okay with that too. I'm okay with making an alteration at the next one. Or,
Yeah, I mean, at the next,
Not
next
change.
year from now, then you look at it and
Yeah.
see what was done this year, and if it's not to satisfactory, you don't have to do it.
Motion?
Make a motion that we choose approve the revision, professional services.
I have a motion by Commissioner Floyd, second by Commissioner Kiefer to approve. All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? The record shows Commissioner Roper voted against. But by 4-1, passed. All right. Consideration to approve professional services agreement for consulting services for the Board of Elections.
At the end of December, Ms. Whitehead resigned from the county. She's no longer there, so the Board of Elections is currently without a director. I believe they were going to start interviewing this week, possibly next. They do have applications, jobs have been posted since around Thanksgiving. So they're going to receive applications. If they haven't started interviewing, they will very soon. But in the interim, because of an accelerated election cycle this year, they would prefer to have someone on board with some knowledge of the process, the gyms equipment, LNA testing, ballot preparation, poll worker training, and to be present at the elections to make sure there's no issues that go on there. And they're just basically trying to seek a professional services contract in which they would have Ms. Whitehead provide these particular services in case they do not get someone on board in time, basically. It's a safeguard in that process is what they're trying to do. Because in the past, when they've had to bring people in from the state for this, it was rather expensive, and they believe this is a more cost-effective way of doing it. As I stated, the agreement basically is for ballot preparation, LNA testing, operation of the gyms, equipment, poll worker training, and general questions that may arise throughout the day. They have, Ms. Morgan is now, she's acting as the director. There's been no change in her position, but she is in charge of the office staff on a day-to-day basis. Compensation will be $25 an hour, reimbursed bi-weekly. This contract contemplates a maximum of $10,000, which is 400 hours. They don't believe they'll use that. that's the number they asked to put in there. That's certainly up to the board, whether you want to cap it there, higher or less, whatever you would like to do, should you choose to approve it for a period of 1 year, with the board being able to terminate 30 days notice, so 30 days notice termination clause. Obviously, if you approve this, there's up to $10,000 in funds potentially. Like I stated, we currently are without a director. We have been, since January 1. So there's some money available in that salary until it's filled. However, I can't tell you how long that'll be. They may hire somebody tomorrow that's without employment and start. It may be a month, it may be 6 months. I just don't know. And they are in charge of that hiring process, they being the Board of Elections. So that's really out of this board's control as to that amount of time. Should they hire somebody and expend those $10,000, that's an unbudgeted
We'll have to find it.
thing that we'll have to find. In addition to an election coming in May that wasn't budgeted either because that got moved up. So that'll be coming off at some point in the future as well. So keep that in mind
Is
too.
it an additional? It's not an additional one, it's just earlier.
It's earlier.
Yeah.
And normally it's not budgeted because budget year's through
Fiscal.
It's through June 30th, so since it got moved up, it's not in the budget. We didn't anticipate spending that dollar figure. So we're getting prices on that now, also that'll have to come back to you. Also, because of the acceleration of the schedule, because it moved up, not extra, I appreciate that.
Well, like you said, she's not working, so we're not having to pay her salary, so that'll sort of compensate for that.
It will, but again, and depending on how long that position is vacant, it may cover the entire thing, it may not. Again, we just don't know the answer to that.
I don't mind going on record as saying, I personally don't mind if there's a small overlap and they get somebody brand new, that she continues until that's
That's what I
solved.
said. If it costs over $10,000, you can just bring it back to the board and we can amend that.
Yes, sir, and
If we need some more.
I actually asked for a cap in there just because I didn't think it was fair to the board to have an open-ended contract. She could, 40 hours on the clock or 60 even at this.
That's 10 weeks.
Well, it is, it's 10 weeks. And that's the number they offered was 10,000. Again, that's completely up to the board's purview. I think what they wanted is we cut it in half. It's 20 hours. They may be coming back that they felt, appropriate. That's, the entire thing's up to the board.
She didn't want to work full-time, that's the reason she quit anyway.
Yes, sir.
And the superintendent, the election superintendent does have increased duties this year with campaign. The filings have to be done there now instead of Tuesday.
I'd like to see her work in the first election. We need to ensure that first election goes smoothly.
Even with a new director, this will allow her to still be on board through that process. It's just for continuity.
That's a lot to that job.
Yes, and it's security. That's what they're asking for.
Motion?
Make a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the agreement.
Have a motion?
Make a motion to approve order number 1.
And a second.
I'll second.
I was offering him a second as well.
More second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. And you don't want to change midstream of an election. That would be could be a fiasco. Next item. Consideration to approve for the chairman to sign the local administered project recertification application.
Mr. Chairman, this is another one that needs a acronym alphabet dictionary as I get started. I'm going to get y'all one of those up at some point. We as a local government are what DOT considers a sub-recipient of federal funds. They being the recipient, we being the sub-recipient. A case of that would be high-risk rural roads, local, high-risk rural roads and local system. Yeah, it's a couple different projects anyhow. Both I-16 Oil Road and Effingham Parkway, because we're providing PE on that, we are a sub-recipient of federal funds. In order to receive those funds, we have to be certified through your Department of Transportation with the local assistant project manual. And there's 2 other certifications that go with that. You'll see the LAP, local assistant project, PDP, which is the plan development process, light of course. So we have to have a crash course in the way GI does business, is basically what this is. We went through this process back in 2011. It was good for 3 years, so it's now expiring. 5/11 2011 will be when it expires, but they want us a little bit earlier than that. And basically what you're committing to here is additional training in the LAP, right-of-way acquisition, and Title VI, which is your civil rights, your ADA stuff, compliance, no later than June 30th, 2014. Those classes have not yet even been scheduled by GDOT. They're usually offered through their LTAP program, which is Local Training Assistance Program. The classes, at least the first round, are free of charge. It will require staff time to go to them, and there were 3 full days the last time. So that's what the board will be committed to, is staff time to go to these things. And basically, if you want to receive, be a subrecipient of federal funds, you approve these. If you don't, I'm not sure what happens. I guess we don't get any money. Probably really don't want to find out. There's forms in here that are filled out for your signature. They're exactly the same as they were last time. We're full CA certified, compliance acceptance. Which we're certified, we mention any like federal projects. And you can see who's responsible for it, beginning on page 5 of 11 of your material. County Commissioner, Civil Engineer, or Consultant. As you can see, the County Commission is responsible for most everything, which means anything we do has to come back before the board.
What's the qualifications of the staff that can attend the certification?
You have to be a registered professional engineer.
Okay. Is there a limit to the number of people we can send for that certification?
No, sir. And if you look on page 4 of 11, you'll see there's up to 3 different spots for the LAP, PDP, certification. We can charge them more than one if you'd like to do so.
On our staff, we have 2.
To my knowledge, we have 2, yes, sir. One is currently certified. If you would like the other, we can certainly do that.
Who are they?
Myself and Mr. Gall.
And you hold the certification now?
Yes. Sort of, it's expired.
Yeah.
But it was a 3-year, and that's what he said. They're going to do it every 3 years. They actually let it lapse, so.
And there's no cost to attend this training?
There was not the first time. I'm assuming the second time will be the same. It was all done through LTAC. No, so there was absolutely no charge. The first time was 2 days in Jessup, 1 in Geekula, and 1 in Macon. Now they've added an additional class to it in right-of-way acquisition. And actually, there was a Title VI that I went to in Savannah for a 3rd day, but it's just staff time.
But if we have 2 PEs on staff, does it make sense to have both certified?
I mean, we certainly can. I don't know if you want both actively trying to manage projects, the same project anyhow.
I didn't say that.
No, sure. If you'd like to have both certified, I don't think it's bad business at all. And going forward, I'll point out this is a 1-year certification. The initial was a 3-year. Going forward, it'll be for periods of 1 year. So this will happen, presumably, unless they change their stance, this will happen once every year.
Well,
so yes, if you have a staff changeover or turnover or something, that gives you that continuity.
it would seem like it. But this is to authorize us to sign the certification application.
Yeah, this is to renew for an additional 1 year. Again, we're making a commitment in this renewal that someone will get the necessary training by June 30th, 2014. As I stated, 2 of the 3 classes haven't even been scheduled. I wish I'd written down the 3rd one was. They're generally between Jessup. They have them all over the state, but they usually have them in Jessup or Macon that we can get to locally without having to drive to Forest Park or something.
Does any board member, if it's not going to cost anything but staff time, have any problem with having?
There's no confusion who the lead engineer is.
Oh, no.
There's no cost to it, that's what it says here, there's no cost to sign the application.
But if there's absolutely no benefit, why do we want to have the loss of staff time? I don't get either way.
We don't even have to decide that tonight based on what we have to vote on.
No, that has nothing to do with this application. This application will go forward with my name, with our current whole certification. But should the board choose to send 2 people, I think that's certainly your prerogative. And basically, it says the local agency must notify the department within 30 days of any name or position changes. So if the person left and you notify, I don't know what that means. I don't know to pull your certification, because you couldn't necessarily get recertified in that 30 days because you have to wait for classes to be offered. So I think it's just a safeguard more than anything. It's all from my perspective.
I think we're okay, we should okay both you and Leo. And if one of you can't go, at least one of you can go.
Yes. And again, I don't even know what the dates are. We can certainly bring that back.
All it is is staff time,
And
and
I think we have to fill out this form.
We have to fill out a form for both. I thought the motion was just to, I thought you were saying that what we're doing is guaranteeing somebody will do it. So we have to tell them who and how many right now?
Well, I don't think so. It does ask for multiple names and expiration dates, but because we only have one certified, I think we would fill out just like it is. And then once within 30 days of having the other person certified, we will have their employees notified that we've added an additional person, because right now we don't have a certification number to give them for that additional person.
And if there's no cost involved, you don't even have to ask us. Ultimately, right?
Well, you're
Well, staff
staff.
time.
It's staff time.
It's staff time. We don't necessarily ask when we do a prize and all that, start with go forward.
Motion?
I make a motion to approve alternate number 1 and, let Tullis and, Leo to go to it, put the application in.
With the understanding that Tullis is our lead engineer on any project.
What the heck you wanna put that on it, that's fine. Well, they do 2 different things, really.
Somebody want seconds?
Was that a second?
No.
Ask to vote for a minute.
No seconds?
I don't know, well, I don't know that we need to modify it and say, Toss and Steve. I think at this point right here, it just needs to be the motion to approve it.
I
The
agree.
motion will die,
But
lack
the
of a
motion,
second.
there is a motion, and we can formally let it die.
We can do that. I mean, Tullis' name is on here, we just.
I do not know that.
I'll make a motion that we approve it as presented.
First motion died for lack of a second. The motion on the floor is to approve the application as written.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
I have a second to that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried.
And then later on, we can say something to.
Gotcha. All right, let's talk about our MPO.
Well, there's a lot of difference in the two they gave us.
Consideration to approve a planning boundary for the Coastal Region Metropolitan Planning Area Core, MPO.
7/22/2013, this came before the board last, and the board actually voted on a boundary which was what I will now term as the functional classification boundary. It's what's shown on here as option number 1 in Tom's letter. At that particular point in time, I believe what the board's vote was to elect the smallest area possible, which was that functional classification boundary. Since that time, we've received additional information which indicates that is not the smallest boundary that we can possibly choose. And if you'll notice, there's a letter in here from Mr. Thompson of Core MPO explaining the process and where he's at. He gives a couple of things on the second page of his letter, some estimates of dues that will be expected from Effingham County, depending on which one we choose. And then he's got some bullet lists along the bottom of things that he feels are benefits of being in the MPO to try to persuade your decision, if you will. The third and fourth page of his dialogue shows 2 different boundaries, and as you stated, there's quite a bit of difference. One is it incorporates virtually all of Rankin and a good portion of the south end of Effingham County. It's what the GDOT planning office actually asked of them to do around this out to nearest roads and so forth. And the reason they're doing that is there's a functional classification that they use of urban and rural for classifying roads, and it has a difference of design criteria, speeds and so forth. And that was what the purpose of that was for functional classification of roadways, not necessarily for anything else. What the law states is that the urbanized area and the area expected to be urbanized in the next 20 years must be included. That's what's shown on option number 2, page 6 of 9. Those 2 little areas are what is currently included in this MSA. Now, the area expected to be urbanized, we can take a drill down and look at that. However, a lot of this is surrounded by wetlands and so forth, and probably would not be expected to grow. So there may be a slight increase from what you see on option number 2. And if you go on down a few more pages, just skip past the other 2. These are sort of the maps you were given last time. But if you look at the last one, page 9 of 9, I gave you this to really show you what's included inside of those areas. That's really what this was about. You see the northern or western, easternmost one basically is between Hodgeville and 30. It's a subdivision that comes off of, I'm not even sure what road it is, but it's a residential subdivision that's included within that. And then if you look at the other one, there's a branch, is sort of the northern type border of that. And then you go in, that's the racetrack. Road, back to Riga Farms. The Riga Farms, that road coming between 17 is, a real, and that's Roland. A Riga Farm, that's what I said. Roland Road, Riga Farm subdivision is what's actually shown in that red there, or in the pink. Off to the far right-hand side, you'll see a yellow line coming through there. That's our Parkway project. I put that on there just to show you that it's not included anywhere in the MSA. And if you'll flip back a page, you can kind of see it, scooting across there. And the reason for pointing that out is we have to go to the MPO for federal dollars inside of the MSA. Anything outside of that is a step process, just like we currently do, will not be included in our TIP, which means that our Parkway project would not necessarily have to show up in our TIP. So again, we need to drill in and look just a little bit in this area, see if there's anything else growth-wise we would expect in the next 20 years, but it would certainly not look like a functional classification.
They put in here somewhere about 2, might not pass the federal guidelines.
That's right. That's what Mr. Thompson said, and that's what I'm saying because it's the area expected to be urbanized in 20 years. We may need to grow that area just a little bit, but what has been indicated to us at this point is that we, the local government, know better our comprehensive and our land use plans than Corps or even GDOT does. So they're not going to fight us tremendously if we tell them that it's not going to grow. In other words, they're going to look to us for that projection. Not necessarily what Mr. Thompson's opinion is on that. But he's correct, that it's the urbanized area plus what's expected to be. Now, we can justify that it's not going to grow like it's completely separated by wetlands or some other, issue. I don't think that's the case here. I think it probably would grow slightly, but not necessarily. It's certainly not going to grow in that round area.
But someone at GDOT said they don't have a crystal ball to know what it's going to be.
Yes.
And they certainly aren't going to tell us.
That's correct. If we tell them that it's not going to, they have no mechanism by which to disagree with us.
There's a lot of difference in annual dues between the two of them.
That's correct. Now let me just...
Includes a portion of Rankin, which they would have to share the parts of Rankin.
Yes, sir. That's correct. Now, and let me say, basically what this does is before we may have had a vote, but we didn't really have a chair, we had somewhat of a three-legged stool. This takes the stool completely out. Functionally, we would not be part of the MPO. I mean, there's no reason to be. There's no federal projects that would show up in that area. We have to be by law, but I don't think we would really even have a vote. Now, that has nothing to do with these maps or what you're talking about today. That's in their bylaws, which is decided by the policy committee, which is made up of all the elected bodies within Chatham County. That's a discussion for further on, but I mean, if you can see the percentage of the population, it's insignificant. I don't know why we really functionally having to vote on their board. But that being said, we're not necessarily sharing those dues either.
But even if we paid the 18 or as much as 50,000 that he first estimated, we still wouldn't have a voice that would make any difference.
The initial proposal, and again, understand it's just a proposal, was for 16 votes, and we may have had one of those.
Well, personally, I think we have a lot of direction being given to us by some knowledgeable people that is telling us that it's best for us to keep it as small as we can. And that would be my recommendation. And I realize at some point you even thought that it might be beneficial to go up as far as the congressional line so that we could get some engineering data and stuff like that. I just don't see any benefit to this.
The planning area is going to be just that, also the large areas of planning you can do. Given an opportunity though between this one, before what I thought anyhow was, or honestly at this point, was that it was the functional classification, what you see on the previous maps. At that point, you've taken up about half of it. You may go up a little bit larger. Given the opportunity of this smaller, I would certainly advise you to do this. Basically, what it does is keeps you out of the MPO for the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because we won't consider this again to the next decennial census.
Because we won't get any benefit if we get a bigger area. It just means possibly more study money that would come down that's going to get used up. But
more than likely, there's certainly not a tangible benefit that I can point to say if you do this, you're going to get this out of it. There's no guarantee of money coming back. There's no guarantee of projects. And basically, any project that receives federal funds is now balanced between Bryan, Chatham, and Effingham counties, all vying for that pot of money. The pot of money gets no bigger.
And at this point, it's my understanding Bryan County is out.
Bryan County, unincorporated Bryan County is completely out of the MPO because the MSA is contained within Richmond Hill.
Yeah.
So Richmond Hill will come into the city of, but the unincorporated area of Bryan County is not included in this correct.
But at least we finally got something like I've been asking Tom for how many months? 8, 9?
Quite a while, yes sir.
Give me something in writing to tell us exactly what our cost is. And even this is an estimate, because this still goes before his board. There's no guarantees. If we were to say, okay, let's expand this or whatever, there's no guarantees to this commission here that our cost is going to be limited to this.
They have a work program they put forth each year, which is functionally their budget, which is approved by their board, their policy committee, and I believe in this case even NBC, because of the way it's structured now. That'll have to change also. But that sets forth their budget, and the dues would obviously be contingent upon that. One of the big things they do is see how much federal money they can get in this at 20% back. So that's how they leverage federal dollars. Is they have to put in 20 cents for every federal dollar that they get. So that's a component of it. Then they take their studies, they take their staff functions, they take their training and lump it all together in their work program. And that is how their budget's set, and obviously that's where the dues come from. Yes.
If there was a federal highway that will come through here somewhere in the next 10 years, could we expand our area, or we can't after
We could, yes, we can expand this at any time. Now, just because there's a federal highway doesn't mean we'll get funds. It just means we're dealing with the MPO instead of GDOT directly.
Okay.
We can still receive federal funds. That's what the LAP was for, that you just voted on, was so that we can be a subrecipient of federal funds. It just all goes into a statewide STIP instead of their TIP, their Transportation Improvement Program, versus their statewide Transportation Improvement Program. But that TIP is incorporated into the STIP by reference. And then again, this is alphabet soup, so I'm going to get y'all that sheet of paper one day.
I need it before our meeting